All right. Little Lucy says it's dinner time over here. Oh, man. Oh, it looks pretty good. Y'all, I think I'm going to be pretty pleased with this overall. So if you're watching on Discord, you are getting the mic from my new webcam because I'm doing Discord via laptop and then I'm doing my Twitch stream via my phone. Now, the big issue there is going to be that I'm guessing I'm going to have to do some switching out because, of course, this is the night that my phone didn't charge too well. So if I have to switch out, I guess we're going to find out, aren't we? We will find out. In which case, I guess I'll switch over and try to do Discord on my phone and Twitch on my laptop. The big reason I didn't start with that is because Twitch on my laptop was the first thing I tried when I was back in the Midwest for my vacation, and so it didn't seem like that was working too well. But of course, on my phone, I have the most. I mean, I got this phone so that I could do some live stuff on it, and for live stuff, I mean, generally, you need one of two things. You need an incredible battery life, which, I mean, it's a phone, and I didn't get a crazy battery life phone, so it's just got a pretty average mobile phone battery life. Or you need to be able to plug it in. And when I plug mine in, it gets this terrible buzzing noise that kind of dwarfs everything else. So, yeah, I don't know quite what to do about that, but I mean, what are you going to do? What is there to do? But I will say, I am going to go ahead and let Discord at large know that we are live and good to go. Which means y'all are going to get to see my sweet, like, sort of tie-dye, bleached blue shorts here. Don't worry about it. Cooking with Sidecar. All right, and almost done. Okay. All right, there we go. So yes, if you are watching on Discord, I'm going to be over in the creativity chat because that seems like the best spot for this one. Creativity is under the Your Creations category. And yeah, I think I'm gonna move my laptop a little bit because I want to be able to like monitor this pretty regularly. I want to chat with chat. I want to know what y'all are up to, how y'all are doing. Okay, now who do we got here? We have got Gems, Ciderfish, Roll It, hello, Proteus Spade, Monkey, hello, how do you do? Who else? I probably could have done with more lighting in here, but I don't think I'm gonna mess with it right now. Food, says Gems. Food. Good Courage. Say hello to Little Courage for me. All right. Yeah, folks, I think I'm gonna give it about 10 minutes for folks to kind of filter in. You know what? I'm looking at this and I'm thinking it would be A, easy, and B, pretty quick to pop in one extra light, and I think it would help out here. So I'm gonna go grab one. And this will actually give me a chance to go check on how much better time I'm gonna have with my phone here. And while I'm away, I'm probably gonna keep it plugged in, so there might be that bad keying noise that I really hate. Fortunately, my phone is looking pretty charged at this point. I'm just gonna keep this plugged in. All right, so if somebody wonders what that nasty noise is, Let them know it's very temporary. I'm gonna go grab a light. I'll be back. Now the question is this bulb functional? I picked up this light for work because I had requested one a long time ago and I wasn't seeing it. And then, yeah, the moment I went and grabbed it, they were like, "Oh, we can just use this one from this other spot. You can take that one home, okay? All right. I'll take an extra light, I suppose. Let's see. I think if I go ahead and plug this in here. Plug this in here. Get myself a bulb in place. Oh, good grief. Okay. I guess I over twisted. Huh. Well, let me go ahead and get a bag for this. Yikes. And this is, of course, like, now I'm over top of all my food, so let me go ahead and unplug this one more time. Because I definitely don't want to be doing this over top of my food. Judas. That wasn't good at all, Gems. Yeah, it just straight up, it busted. It bursted, it busted right in my hands. Excuse me? There's a light bulb, solderfish. I just broke a light bulb in my hand like I'm some sort of Godzilla. Alright, so this is gonna get double wrapped real quick. Don't worry, this is why we give ourselves a little extra time as we boot up the stream. Oh, my hand is totally fine. Yeah, it did not touch my hand. I just want to make sure no little glass bits are hanging around. Yeah, we're good. I think it all got caught in the can. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and give that one more shot. Although I will say, that is kind of what I get for trying to, I wanted it to be on camera because I was like, this is good presentation. This is because I'll do it like this because then everyone can see what I'm up to, what I'm doing in the moment by moment. But yeah, no, I guess that didn't serve me so well this time. Yeah, no, I definitely didn't cut my hand. It did not. No broken part made contact. It's one of these little screw balls, and so it the place where it snapped was away from my hand. I didn't actually make contact with broken glass at all. Why is this so... It's super flickery. Alright, welcome to Spooky Stories with Sam. It's also making a really horrendous noise. Alright, well, forget this, I guess. It'd be nice, but we don't need it. I think next time, though, I'll try to remember to bring in my... I'll try to remember to bring in the blimp, because that would make this process pretty nice, having the blimp here. But I was considering, do I have time for it? I've got time, but right now it's on this wooden dowel. The big, cross piece is just a wooden dowel, and it's bending in a really weird way. I need to replace that with a copper pipe, but I suppose for right now, we can sort of hang up in this region. What do we think? Do we like that a little better for right now? Can you see me? What do we think of that angle? It's kind of funny because I've got my phone here on a tripod, but then I've got my webcam mounted onto my phone. Literally just clipped onto my phone there. So, everybody, welcome. Let me do two things that are going to improve the sound drastically. One of which is to hook my lavalier mic onto myself. Like I said, I don't know about this thing in terms of like battery life. That remains to be seen. It might be great, it might be crap. Fortunately, because I'm using it on mobile, I don't need the battery life to be anything because it doesn't use battery, but for other purposes, we shall see. But this is thing A that's going to improve audio a lot. You should be able to hear me really nicely now. But thing B is going to be to stop powering my phone, which is going to eliminate that nasty buzzing noise. And I think we've given folks time to kind of jump in here. And as such, I'm going to get started. Okay, are y'all ready for this? Are y'all ready for this thing? Gems, it's food time. The buzzing's almost gone with the mic? Okay, see if this sounds any different. On go, but I'm not going to say anything so you can actually hear the moment that it happens. And truly, this will actually be really important, Twitch, because if there's no difference, I'm definitely going to leave my phone plugged in. But let me know if there's a sound difference. I'm going to go 3, 2, 1, and I'm going to unplug it on go. Let me know if there's a noticeable difference between before and after. So 3, 2, 1. Is there a noticeable difference? If there's not, I'm definitely going to leave that plugged in. But in the past, I have always had issues where I've gotten some really nasty buzzing. A tiny bit? Okay. Well, you know, we shall see, and maybe I can just sort of let it sort of catch up with itself at different intervals. But folks, hello! All right, now let me see. Let me take a moment to center myself. What if I just, how am I going to signal myself in the edit? Maybe I'll just give it like a quick, this is for me in the future. When I come back and I come to edit this, I'm gonna have to wonder like, okay, so what was I doing here at this moment? And this will get me to stop the video. So I will go ahead and edit starting at this point. This is when we begin. Hello everyone and welcome. Welcome back to Sidecar Stories. Welcome back to Book Fair. If you're wondering why on earth Sam is doing a cooking stream right now, well, it's because of Book Fair. I don't even know how much I need to like project with this thing on, but this is, yeah, good, 2 claps. To I guess match my audio up, but I shouldn't need to do that. This is actually one I'm going to be pulling directly from Twitch because I'm not recording anything on my laptop for this one. Oh yeah, I can give it a couple claps. Okay, it's going to get loud for just a second. There we go. Okay, cool. Everybody, my name is Sam. This is Sidecar Stories, and what we typically do here is read a lot of stuff. As a matter of fact, I'm going to have some fun books to talk about later on. I got both of these as gifts. This is the unofficial Harry Potter cookbook and Hero's Feast, a sort of D&D related cookbook. We're going to talk about these later, but I'm kind of excited for that. This is kind of like time filler depending on how much time this process all takes. But the reason why we're doing a cooking stream today, the reason why I can do streaming sort of in general is thanks to all the folks who have supported the channel. It has given me the confidence and the ability to make the numbers work and take a few days off of work this week in order to do a full week of streaming. 2 streams a day, every day for a full week. This is our cooking stream, which I don't know what to call this. I constantly try to go with kind of either a very like library related or a very like sidecar road trip related sort of thing. I feel like food truck might make sense for this or something like that. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I'm really excited and I'm very thankful to all of my patrons who have made this possible. Right now, we have got a bunch of deals going on, essentially with merch. We have got, I've moved some things around on Patreon, so people at certain levels will get even more than they did a month ago, and that is going to continue into the future. I wanted to make sure I didn't set anything too low and have to set it up high, so I set it at a higher level, knowing that it was hopefully going to come down, and a lot of it has. So if you want to jump into the Discord and have special Discord roles and be able to see the archive chats, jump in there. If you want to see behind the scenes stuff, if you want to see, for instance, behind the scenes on this, I'm going to have a little bit up there for this after Book Fair is over. if you want to see new projects and new shows, and ultimately if you want to be able to vote on when we have more time, for instance, if I've got an open slot weekly or monthly or just every once in a while, patrons are going to be the ones to vote on what we do with that time. And maybe it's this, maybe it's cooking streams, maybe it's more Jackbox games, maybe it's more choose your own adventure, because Book Fair has been an awesome chance to go ahead and try some new things. It is so weird to have so much more of my body on camera. I hate it. Y'all, thanks for joining me. Let's see, we have got gems in here. I see solderfish, I see Yitas, I see Marinver, food trip, road trip with food, recipes for road trips, road food. Oh, maybe street food? That's not bad. I don't know. We'll have to figure it out. We'll have to figure it out. Yes. Okay. So, this is a book that I got as a gift from my younger sister. This is actually my youngest sister, who is a big part of the reason why Sidecar Stories exists at all. This is my youngest sister, and I kind of started Sidecar Stories partially as a way to stay connected with her and my second youngest sister. So this was a gift from her very recently, back when I was in the Midwest, and then Heroes Feast, the D&D one, this is from Mama Cass. And I'm super excited about both of them. As a matter of fact, once we are done with the cooking bits today, I think I would like to go and, hang out with those books and maybe take a look through them together. I think that could be fun. Roll it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I am not joking. I spent I took about 3 hours of time to really focus up, prep this stream. And I'm going to tell you right now, about 45 minutes of that was going to retrieve groceries, and 2 hours of that was getting the kitchen sort of cleaned up and getting this all set, because I wanted to seem intentional. So I hope you are all ready to do some cooking. Now, today I am going to be making it's sort of a skillet meal that I've been working on for a while, but it combines a lot of the stuff that I've learned about cooking in the past few years. And I'm going to be talking about that stuff, but also just sort of chatting with y'all. So if you've got any questions about how I do things or why I'm doing things a certain way, or if you just want me to describe the food more, I will definitely do any of those things. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. And I also don't really know where to start, except to probably sharpen my knife and wash my hands. Somewhere in between there. Let's see. The side dish. Ooh, side dish is pretty good, solderfish. Side dish is pretty darn good. That's not bad at all. Okay, now let me see. Does my mic reach to the sink? It does. Okay, so you're gonna hear sink noises in a second. They might be fine. It might be absolutely heinous to listen to. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I don't know how bad this is. Gonna get my hands washed up. And we are pretty good to go right now. Okay, there we go. Now, this meal is a chicken and bacon and green bean skillet. That's sort of what I've called it thus far, but it combines a lot of what I've learned about cooking, and I do consider myself a fairly accomplished home cook. I would say, in terms of skills I've gotten better at, definitely some of the internet stuff, which is I don't even know what sort of name to put on it sometimes, to be frank with you, but I mean, that's kind of fine. I don't mind that. But I've learned a lot of things that I just don't know what to call it sometimes. And yeah, the Wonder Woman magnet. A lot of this stuff is Cass's. As a matter of fact, she made these for me. She made these which is what, fridge magnet, I guess tiles would be the right word. We've got Hufflepuff, we've got Slytherin, we have got Gryffindor and Ravenclaw. I think she was just looking for a fun little project to do, and I love them. But other than that, yeah, I think this is all Mama Cass stuff. Well, no, this is for the two of us. This is some pandemic stuff. We'll talk about it later. But chicken, bacon, green beans skillet. And it combines a lot of the stuff that I've learned about cooking because I really enjoy watching people like Binging with Babish, who I got to do it again because I got to do it like every couple of months, I guess. Babish, I'm throwing down the gauntlet, which in this case is a knife-safe sharpening glove. So I'm throwing down the gauntlet, Babish. I don't know sort of why. Still, we have yet to really solidify what it is you and I are feuding about, but I'll get you yet, Babish. I'll get you yet. No, Sidetracked is definitely a good name, but I think I need it for something else. I need something definitely food related for this, and I think side dish, I'm gonna have to decide between something very like road related, but side dish is a very nice linguistic tie-in, which you know where my heart's at. I do quite a bit of cooking, and I think a lot of the things that I have learned sort of in order of technique. And so I guess I'll just start by saying, like, I learned from my mom how to cook. My mom and my dad both. My mom did most of the cooking for the house, but my dad actually had more of the experience at the time. He had worked in like hospital kitchens and such. But I learned from both of them. And so I learned quite a few things, and a lot of it was very industrious sort of cooking styles. Very efficient, very good for feeding large families, because of course, if y'all are familiar with my with episode 1 of the Shelf Confidence podcast that I put up, you will know I am the oldest of 6 children. And so with that many people in the house, it was pretty important to keep them fed efficiently. So I learned a lot about, lots of slow cooker stuff. I learned a decent bit about sort of how to make protein work, how to cook chicken, beef, etc., what you're looking for there. But a lot of it was efficiency based. And that was good. I had a great foundation when I started to cook for myself. I was very competent in the kitchen. I wasn't afraid to spend some time around heat. It didn't make me anxious to pull stuff out of the oven. At that point, I was just sort of ready to get into it. And I got into it a lot further than I thought that I would. I really enjoy Binging with Babish. I really like Adam Ragusa. I can only hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Quite a few other people. J. Kenji Lopez Alt, Bon Appetit. Lots of different people. I've been sort of like watching for years now, I suppose. Alton Brown. Ooh, Alton Brown. Lots from Alton Brown. And I'm actually curious, like, what, if y'all are into any food tubers or just general sort of food entertainer creators, I would be curious who y'all are watching as well. Because there's one darn guy, he's a fairly new, like all-star on the block. His last name is like Wasselman or something. I've watched plenty of his videos recently. I just can't remember his name right now. Little Lucy says, oldest of 5 here. We used to call it ranch/camp food because it was all big quantities of very easily cooked meals. Yes. Josh Weissman, Yeetus Famitas, thank you. Josh Weissman, yes. It's not that I couldn't remember him because I don't watch a lot of it. I love his stuff. It's slightly more advanced. It sort of takes for granted that you understand certain techniques already. So if you have been watching a lot of something very, very step-by-step, like Gordon Brown really, Alton Brown, not Gordon Brown. Alton Brown will talk about things sort of from bottom to top, everything from theory all the way down to very practical technique. Josh Weissman tends to take for granted that you have learned certain things, and by that virtue is willing to take you a little bit further. So I consider him a really great graduation into something slightly more elevated. Josh Weissman, fantastic. Cheaper by the half dozen, yes indeed. Little Lucy says there's this one guy on Insta called Hungry Empire. He's got great recipes, all types of Asian food, plus restaurant recommendations around LA, mostly, and some other places around the US. Now, I could definitely see checking that out. So I'm going to try to remember that, Hungry Empire. If you don't put it in Discord, I'm not going to remember it at all. So I hope you do, and if not, that's okay. I don't spend a ton of time on Instagram anyway, even though I should. I do internet things. I probably should, but I don't. I'm very bad at it. But through all of that, I would say I started out just sort of like trying individual recipes, But what really worked for me was to tackle individual techniques at different times. So instead of saying, I want to get great at this one recipe and then great at this next recipe, I tried to do sort of, recently I've gotten into calling them units. For instance, I did a unit on sauces, where I would just try to learn a lot about sauces and how they are made, why they're made the way that they're made, and how I can kind of apply them to what I do. And so I did a unit on sauces. I think my next unit is probably going to be sort of like braising. That would be fun. But I did, back before I was calling them units, I did one, I spent a lot of time trying to get really good with stir frying. That was super helpful. I learned a lot about how to measure how to meter my heat. How to use heat properly. So I'm going to be talking about that stuff today. Hopefully that is interesting to you, because I would love to kind of pass on some of the stuff that I've learned, because I think I come from kind of an odd generational perspective, wherein, and I don't mean my parents versus their parents, etc. I mean sort of on the internet, there are a lot of food tubers that came up in kitchens, and they're using what they learned professionally to come back and teach people about it. And so I kind of like to talk about this, hopefully from the perspective of somebody who, I have the access to the exact same set of learning that you do, because I've gotten a lot of it from food tubers. I have never gone to culinary school, etc. I just like to do this sort of stuff. So I'm sort of like, I understand exactly where you're coming from, as opposed to sometimes I think there is, most of them are very, very good, but I think there is sometimes this sense of like, where is the gap between what I learned at culinary school, me as a professional kitchen person, what I learned in culinary school versus the layman. So I think I can kind of distill all of this down. Yes, that would be fantastic, little Lucy, over in the creative chat. Wunderbar. Wunderbar. Okay, so here we go. Are y'all ready for the big thing that I have learned in, at this point it's been 5 years of like cooking a lot and consistently for myself. There is one huge thing that I've learned. This is like the number one secret that I could pass on. It is going to translate best visually. So I'm going to invite you back down to the counter here. As you can see, I've got a bit of a line here. I've got a divider. And on one side, I have got my tools. Knife, pans, pots, utensils, etc. On the other side, I've got my ingredients. I have got my chicken, my bacon, some butter, some veggies here, my water. There is one thing, if I could communicate to you, that I have learned in all of this, that I think most people think about sort of wrong, that really helped me to understand how to like improve my cooking drastically. It really, honestly, not just to improve my cooking, but just sort of like lay a foundation for, oh, here is a big part of the process of cooking. It's this one thing that's a bit of a misconception. And I think it could be best described like this. I'm gonna take the water and I'm gonna move it over here. If I could pass one thing along that I have learned about cooking, it is that transition right there. Water feels like an ingredient, right? It goes into the food. It goes. It is something that you would add or subtract, much like an ingredient, and yet I find it much more helpful to think of as a tool than as an ingredient, because a lot of what cooking is sort of the pursuit of, how do I change the water that's in ingredients? How do I remove water? How do I add water? How do I change water? This is basically the big thing that I've learned over a lot of time watching, like I said, watching food tubers, etc. This right here, this transition. Put water on your tools side and figure out how to use it like a tool, and that is going to really improve what you do in the kitchen. It's going to lay a really good foundation. If you can think about water, and if I would add one thing to this, I would say, especially think about the ways that you add and remove water, and the ways that you change water's temperature, make it hotter, make it colder, especially the water that's already in certain foods. And now, with that, I'm going to take this and I'm going to dump it in the sink, because I did my little visual gag, and now I get to dump out that water, because that was just water straight from the tap, and I live in Southern California, you want to use purified water, which, as a matter of fact, I need to grab more as a beverage as well, because that's the other important thing. That's the other important thing for me right now. So let me see, what's the best way to do this so that I'm not like dragging my laptop off the desk. Let's see, I'm gonna grab two things here. I need sort of another, this one I think you could call an ingredient, but this one's just for daddy. Iced tea, which it looks like I got, what, like a finger and a half of iced tea in there? That's fine, it'll be just enough. Hold on, follow me here. Delicious. Delicious. Okay, and then straight up, I do need a little bit of water. Okay, now with my great visual gag done, like I've literally been thinking about that one thing, that one, that one visual gag. I've been thinking about it for months because we talked about possibly doing a cooking stream, and I was like, oh boy, am I gonna get to like pass something on that I've learned here? Fantastic. No alcohol right now, because alcohol, I'm gonna like, I don't have any opposition to it, but I don't think I need it right now. I think it'll make me sleepy. What I'm gonna do right now is sharpen my knife. I'm just gonna give it a few quick draws on this thing, because as many of you who spend some time in the kitchen know, a sharp knife, a knife that is properly sharp, is much less dangerous than a dull knife. If you are doing any cooking things, the dull knife, you have to apply a lot more force, and force means less control. And if you've got less control, you've got a much better chance that the thing's going to slip out, possibly angle toward your fingers, and that's bad news all around. So keep my stuff sharp. It might have needed a little bit of a touch up there, but frankly, I keep this fairly nice and sharp. And I would say, if you were looking at all of this wondering like, okay, can I manage this? Is this something I could do? This is the one thing in my kitchen that is like valuable in any significant way. This is my knife. I got this as a birthday present from my dad. And it is a reasonably high quality knife, but you can do this stuff without, I'm not doing like a ton of knife work here on this one, so no big deal. And then we get to talk about one of my favorite things, which is thrifting. Guess what? I got this for probably, let's see, what do we think? I think this was probably about 12 bucks at Goodwill. I found this one for, I think, about 8 to 10. I found this sheet pan there. This was something that a friend was getting rid of, so I got this one, and also this. Those were gifts as well, but these big old sheets, Goodwill. These prep dishes, Goodwill. My kitchen is not terribly expensive, and I try to keep it that way because I think that's it's handy, and kitchen stuff can get really expensive, but it shouldn't. So right now I've got a couple of cast irons. I've got this smaller one, and then I've got a 12-incher up here. I have got one 12-inch stainless or non-stick, and this lid, which I might need later. And then I've got my big sort of my workhorse here, which is a 12-inch stainless. I got all that stuff from Goodwill, and I keep it all up here on a little wire rack on top of the fridge because it's super handy. I've got a little oil squeeze bottle and a little water squeeze bottle. These are also dead handy. If you do a lot of cooking, this might be something that you don't think of immediately, but there's a huge difference between cooking with this and cooking with just like the bottle of oil that you get from the grocery store. I have a lot better time with this. So these are like, I want to say this thing was like 99 cents. And I think I got like a 6-pack of them for like $2. So definitely consider this. It'll help your cooking out quite a bit. And then over on that side, I've got like some of the non-refrigerated stuff. Let's see, I've got vinegar, I've got mirin, which is a Japanese cooking wine. I've got honey, and I've got some sesame oil. That's my setup. I guess to go through a bit more of it, I've got the stove up here, the oven down here, refrigerator. Hopefully that sort of read on cam. Dishwasher, toaster. We don't have a microwave, and at some point, I suppose if it interests y'all at all, I would go through like how to live without a microwave, because I lived with it growing up and I prefer it without. You'll make your leftovers better if you don't use a microwave, but I can talk about that some other time. Okay, cold box for cold stuff. Right behind me, we have cold box for cold things. And now let's make some food. So a couple of things about what we're doing here. I am anticipating I'm going to do some of this stuff wrong because I've never done this on camera before. So it's going to feel very, very weird. I think I'm probably going to start with my bacon because I'm going to try and get this starting to cook before I deal with some of the other stuff, and that will sort of help to make the time pass a little bit more nicely. So what I like to do is I've got a little sort of elevated shelf up here that y'all can't see. It begins like right down here at the bottom of the screen essentially, and it's about a 1.5 feet deep. So I keep my little prep bowls up there. Those are handy, but I also keep some of my kind of raw ingredient stuff up there as well. And so you may notice that there's that sort of on the edge of the screen, which I suppose will be all right. If it gets too distracting, I might move it. But Marin Ver says, yeah, microwave overrated. I find that it does tend to be, yes. And I think I'm gonna reserve my cast iron for the finished product and also the beans. So I guess I would say the beans and then the finished product. Although, no, that's not true because I wanna make my pan sauce in here. And I'll try to talk about some of the stuff that I've learned here as we go along. So I've got some bacon here. This is from a market nearby. Which is pretty handy to have access to something like that. I actually got all the ingredients here from the market nearby. Skylar, hello. Skylar says, I'm watching this in biology class. Now, what would you be doing that for? You know what? I have to be responsible here. You gotta pay attention to biology class. Skylar, are you kidding? How are you gonna learn your biology? Biology will actually help you cook if you're kind of intent on making that happen, which, I mean, I think you should be. And I typically make these in huge batches, so I'm actually not sure what, like, I'm a little unsure about proportions right now. You're done with your notes? All right, then I accept it. I will accept it then. And I'm gonna move this, I guess, a little bit closer because that will, occupy some of this blank space here. That's no good. So I think I'm gonna move this back in place. No, now it's in the way. I'm trying to have a good production here. Okay, close enough. Oh boy. You already taken culinary class? Excellent. Okay, so I think I'm gonna go for, so I've got 2 chicken breasts here. For that amount, I'm probably gonna go for this right here. Definitely not the whole thing. And I'm gonna cut these into lardons, which are basically little batons of bacon. Bacon is like one of the only times I've ever heard the term lardon applied. Lardon. But as you can see, I've got this sort of like this baton of bacon here. This is going to cook up really nicely, and it's going to get a lot of crispiness on the outside while also retaining some of the, a little bit of that bacon chewiness on the inside. Now, if I were cooking this for Mama Cass, as I do for like meal prep and such, I would be making these a bit smaller because she does not care for the chewiness. She likes the crispy, but does not care for the super chewy. I think bacon is best with a bit of both. I do not care for extra crispy bacon. At that point, I think you've burned the darn thing. If you like it like that, I don't have a problem with that, but it ain't my bag. So I like these. I wanna know there's bacon in this. With this one, I wanna know you've got some bacon on you. So I am going to pop this into my pan. I'm gonna give this a kind of a low heat, to be frank. And as you can see, I am throwing this in before my pan is preheated. I'm gonna give this a little bit of water as well. And since I'm cooking just for me and not for you, guess what? This is my sipping water. I'm putting this straight in there. Just a little bit of water at the bottom. And that is going to help to hopefully, this is in theory. I have not seen this play out like the food tubers say, but in theory, starting in a cold pan with a little bit of water in there should let some of the bacon start to come up and start to render before it starts to get crisp, which means that we're going to render out a little bit more of that bacon fat. Okay, now, how are we doing so far? How's my driving? I'm seeing Monkey. I am seeing some great food on the table there. That looks fantastic. What do we got? It looks like a salad and maybe some rice pilaf, but I cannot tell what you're doing for protein there. What is that? What am I looking at there? All right, so like I said, these are big. I recognize these are fairly large, but I'm gonna crisp them down nicely, and then we're gonna be good to go. And so for the rest of this bacon, I'm gonna go ahead and package that up so that I can stick it back in the fridge, and we'll have that for breakfasts. It's so weird to know that y'all can just sort of follow me here vocally. On Discord, this might be a little harder to hear when I walk away, but on Twitch, I've got this mic connected to my apron, so I can go anywhere here. I could walk at least 20 feet away, and you'll still be able to hear me just fine. You may be able to see my bacon is starting to release a bit of steam here, or at least there's steam coming out of the pan. These are going in the trash, and here's another quick kitchen tip that I've learned from doing a lot of fairly, I guess I would call it high intensity cooking. If you've ever worked in a professional kitchen, you can ignore everything that I say here because you are going to know much better than I am. But what I consider myself to be accomplished at is home cooking. And there are a few slightly different skills that you can really apply here. I'm gonna actually knock my heat down here a little bit from medium to just south of medium. I have a paper bag that I keep near my cook station here. For whatever reason, I am cursed. I have, y'all know about my superpower of when somebody can't think of a word, I'm able to guess it within typically one, as many as three, but just about always I can find the word they're looking for in their own head. My sort of, I guess the trade-off there is that this garbage can is cursed, or I'm cursed, I don't know which one. But for whatever reason, I can throw something away from 3 inches. As a matter of fact, this morning I had an eggshell I was trying to put in the garbage from less than 2 inches away. No matter what, my hit rate on this thing is 15%. I don't like to exaggerate because I think it reduces the effect. I am being very literal. I think my hit rate on this thing is about 15%. I can't get stuff in here. So instead, I keep a little paper bag on the counter for my garbage. Now, okay, so Gems is saying, no, you're not throwing those away. I am, because I have tried to keep the fat before, but we don't end up using it. I've tried to. I tend to be pretty good overall. As a matter of fact, my chicken scraps I'm going to save for stock later. But saving a ton of fat for the stock, I have found is I don't know, slightly less handy. But Gems, I recognize the pain that you feel, and typically, I promise, I'm very intentional about trying to save as much as possible. Now, one thing I wish that I could find is somewhere to get chicken that's not so absolutely massive, because there's this thing called woody breast, which apparently is kind of a fairly new development in the agricultural world. It comes from chickens who have been bred to be so absolutely goddamn large that the breasts will sell fine, so there's no incentive to really stop it. But once you get it home and you actually start to cook with it, you realize it is dense and tough, and there's no way to rescue it, except for sometimes I've been able to rescue parts of a chicken breast that are like that. This is different from totally different from freezer burn or anything like that from traveling. Woody breast is just it is a blight, and I don't know how one might fix it. Now, use them in bean soup, says Gems. Well, I tell you what, Gems, if you send me a recipe for bean soup, we don't make a ton of bacon, but we make enough, I would absolutely try it. So you know what? There's nothing else in this paper bag right now. That was literally the first thing to go in here. So instead, I'm just going to save this. But Gems, now it's on you. Now it's on you, Gems. You're going to have to save these. and I will make some bean soup. You'll have to let me know. What's going to happen to this chicken breast is I'm going to sear it in here in the bacon fat, and then I'm going to chop it up into little tiny chunks. Well, I'm going to cube it, and so what that means is this does not need to be pretty. As a matter of fact, we will benefit from a lot of surface area. So what I'm going to do next is kind of butterfly the chicken, which is to say I am going to cut into the thicker parts and kind of unfurl them in a way that is going to give me A, more surface area, and B, it's going to cut down on some of the denser parts of the chicken. So now, as you can hopefully kind of see, a lot of this chicken, instead of being very thin down here and then very thick up here, this has gone from being having a big gradient to having relatively uniform thickness. Now I can kind of exacerbate that. I can improve that a little bit by going through and doing some additional flattening here. If you've got like a meat tenderizer, you might be able to do this as well, but I find something with roughly this surface area is nice. You don't want to go huge. I tried to do it with the bottom of a pan for a while, and I realized like I was just pushing on the whole chicken, which means that I was having a really hard time getting like down to specific parts of it. Like I said, this does not need to be pretty right now. I'm going to give this a little bit of a stir so that everything's getting tossed around a little bit. And I'm going to now bump it back up to medium heat because it should be making a little bit of noise. Right now it's making just about no noise. I should be hearing a little bit of sizzle from this thing. Little Lucy says, what kind of beans do you use for the soup? And yeah, Gems, I'm curious about that as well. Proteus Spade says braising is how, and I assume you're talking about the woody breast stuff. Yeah, it's something I would definitely try with it. I do not currently have a Dutch oven. I have done a tiny bit of braising in my cast iron before, but in general, not a ton. I was a fool, and I have only ever really found one Dutch oven that was in any decent kind of shape, and I was like, I'll find something in slightly better shape. And I've literally in my time of thrifting, I have not found another Dutch oven since. So I really, really want one, and I cannot wait to do some braising in there. I've got a couple of different recipes I really want to try, but I'm going to get good at braising because it is a cooking style that I've really enjoyed eating the food it produces. But yeah, Gems is going to have to remind yourself of what the American words, sometimes it's English, but sometimes it's American words for certain beans, certain ingredients. So as y'all can see, I'm just continuing to flatten this out. As I mentioned, it does not need to be pretty. And this is my prep sheet. This is a sheet pan that I'm using specifically for prep. And this is how I use it at all times, basically. Now you can hear it. There we go. It shouldn't be spitsy. It shouldn't be spitting at me. But that little sizzle sound means that we are getting some of that fat rendered out. There we go. So I've got my chicken cut up, which means that once this pan is ready, once the bacon comes out, we'll have a little bit of bacon fat in there, and I'll be able to cook the chicken in that. So that is why I got this ready next. Now, let me see. Proteus Spade says we had to inherit our Dutch oven. Yeah, I mean, Dutch ovens are really fantastic tools. It is a great thing to have just in general for a lot of reasons, and for a lot of different applications, including things like baking bread at home. I've seen a lot of the best, the best sort of turnout you can get with baking bread at home comes from baking it inside a Dutch oven. Now, you might be able to see I'm just sort of letting my left hand hang out here, and I'm not using it. That's because this is my raw hand. I use my left hand for touching raw ingredients, and I use my right hand for tools, moving dishes around, snipping off some aluminum foil, because I don't want to cross-contaminate anything. Now, typically I would save this in a little small packet, but right now I've just got some aluminum foil, and I am saving this chicken because this is going to become fodder for stock later on. I'm going to use this for chicken stock. I made some really, really good ham stock a while ago, and it's really, really handy stuff to have around. It's kind of fun, and it feels good, for me at least. It really feels good to be to be saving things and using things in general. I know Gems, I know Gems is feeling some kind of way about my getting rid of certain parts of that pork, but hey, you're right. If there's another use for it, I would be more than happy to give it a try. And it sounds like the sort of thing that Mama Cass would like too. So, red and brown lentils, lima beans, kidney beans. Okay, fantastic. Orly Rose says, I switched to organic boneless, skinless thighs, and they cook so well and are never ever dry because it isn't quite the choice, and they tend to be quite inexpensive. Yes, if I could get Cass to move over to thighs for certain things, I would absolutely do so. We each have our bits of pickiness. I, for instance, have a real hard time with certain textures, and then she's got a couple of things that she doesn't care for as well. And I think I still can. I think I need to do a few more experiments, and then I will get her. I think she could be a fan of chicken thighs in certain contexts, like this one, where the texture is kind of going to be changed in the final dish anyway. You know, you're not expecting to really bite in and get like a big, you know, just a mouthful of like chicken breast kind of texture. But have yet to do so. But I think, yes, this, as a matter of fact, this would be an excellent recipe for chicken thighs if that is something that you're into. So definitely consider that. Yep, boneless or I find that it's actually fairly. It can be pretty easy. I believe Alton Brown has a great video on how to break down chicken thighs with the bones in, even with the skins on. I think the skins would actually probably be pretty good in this recipe as well. I think they would go. I think they would go quite nicely. Jem says chicken here is from my neighbor's farm. Pretty organic indeed. And I see Monkey has gotten back to me. Soy marinated pork chops. That sounds delicious. It sounds absolutely delicious. I would say I cannot speak to the authenticity, of course, of a lot of these things, but I really love the eating style of tacos. I love tacos, and I mean, I think that makes me a pretty basic white dude, especially in Southern California. And I also love I love a lot of the ingredients in Asian cooking. And I know there are a lot of different subdivisions of Asian cooking, but I consider myself familiar only at that topmost level. I of course can tell the difference between like Chinese cooking and Japanese cooking, but I probably could not differentiate between different territories of Chinese cooking. But I really love some of the flavors that they use. I love how they use cinnamon with a lot of savory in ways that I think as you move west, we tend to associate cinnamon with sweet in a big way. So these are starting to look like they're almost ready, and I'm a little behind schedule because I'm trying to talk as well. Oh, my chicken. This is going to go in the freezer for when I make stock. Any of you home cooks who make stock, I've actually got a theory, and sort of let me know how you feel about this. So the reason you make stock the way that you do a lot of, it's like a big boiling and simmering process, is to sort of get everything out of the matter that you've put in there. In my head, freezing things, especially vegetables, prior to making stock with them should improve your stock because it means that you've shattered a lot of those cell walls with the freezing process. The ice crystals tend to break down the cell walls, and it should release a lot easier. So any of you sort of knowledgeable home cooks, I would be curious what you think about that. So I am now going to get rid of this head raw chicken, this head raw chicken. This I am going to wash, but I've got another cutting board. I got to be really careful here because I'm pretty anxious about dragging my laptop away. Got to apologize for bad sink noises. And meanwhile, if y'all can hear me, I want to know what the last thing you cooked was that you were like really happy with. Not necessarily like something that you threw in and you were like, but the last thing that you cooked that you were like, yeah, I did it. Because yours doesn't need to necessarily match this description, but for me, I am finding that more and more, I am defining my success in the kitchen by how many of my favorite foods are the versions that I cooked. So for instance, my favorite stir fry is stir fry made by me. My favorite of this meal is a version made by me. And my favorite burgers are a version made by me. And that's kind of like how I measure my progress, is when I've got a meal, is my favorite version made by me or made by somewhere else, like at a restaurant or something. That's kind of how I measure like how successful I've been. Now this is getting pretty hot here. I don't want this to get too dark in the pan, because another thing that is important for my dish here is called fond. This is another huge thing that I have learned about being in a kitchen. That stuff at the bottom of a pan, unless it's black and smells burnt, that stuff is not just grimy pan. That is incredibly valuable to you. So let me go ahead and talk a little bit about this fond while I put this chicken in the pan. I am pulling out my lardons right now. I like to get these nice and crisp on the outside, and I've cut them kind of big so that they can be nice and they can be a little bit chewy on the inside. So I've got a little bit of bacon fat in there, a little bit of that fat, and then a nice bit of that fond. That fond is dope. It's dope. It's the best thing. And if you are not sort of using it, you might be goofing on yourself here. Now I have a pair of tongs. I don't know where they are. So instead I'm just going to use a fork for the moment, even though that's definitely suboptimal for this process. I turned off my heat just because I wanted to slow this process down. But again, we talked about water and sort of understanding how water heats up. A lot of what this was sort of being intentional about how I heated the water that went through that and how that's going to interact with the fat. Now, remember, this is a fairly wet protein right now. Oh, duh. One thing I have neglected to do thus far is I'm going to put some salt. Let me do this on camera. I am going to go ahead and get some salt and some pepper on here. And actually, because Cass isn't here and isn't probably going to eat this, typically I would be making this with probably, I imagine something along the lines of like 5 chicken breasts maybe. I would use that entire piece of bacon. And I would make this with about 5 chicken breasts, maybe 4, and then use quite a bit more green beans as well. So now I've got some salt on there, some pepper, and I'm gonna do a few other things, like I said, just because, heck, I might as well give it a shot. I think it'd be kind of nice. And now, all right, now let's see it. Am I going to get razzed for how much of certain ingredients I've used thus far? Anything? Anything yet? I don't see anything. Okay, Marin Ver says, last thing I made was fettuccine Alfredo. Excellent. Orly Rose says, I make amazing homemade buttermilk biscuits, and fall set me off on making them. Okay, well, I'm excited to see some of those. By the way, y'all, put these in Discord. We've got the creativity channel there for a reason. If you want to like set up a discussion around your thing, like, hey, can we chat about this recipe? I've got questions I want to ask or something like that. Start a thread for them. But if you don't need to do that, or you don't have like, you know, maybe you've got like an idea for like, I'm going to be putting up a bunch of fall recipes. That would be good for a thread as well. But if not, if you don't want any of that, it is totally fine to just go ahead and post pictures or pictures with recipes or just recipes over in the creativity channel and ping those with the interest recipe tag. Because I really would love to see these things. I'm really happy that Mighty Monkey Monkey has put in a picture of food there, and like I know y'all have been like jonesing for a while to have a recipe channel. That's one of the things creativity is designed to be, is kind of a channel for recipes. And I think it looks like on camera, my fond reading is very dark. And I will say that it's got a little darker than I wanted it to, but it is not as burnt as it looks on camera there. Jem says, you reminded me I need to cut up and freeze some veggies. Marinver went with some fettuccine Alfredo. Gems made banana blueberry bread and chicken soup. That sounds awesome. Let's see. Looks like chicken schnitzel. It is, I didn't go nearly as thin as I would go for schnitzel. But yes, it is definitely sort of accomplishing a similar thing, which is to give it a lot more surface area. So I think I'm gonna do, let's see. I've got a couple of combinations I like. Now I wanna be a little bit careful here. Fortunately, this is not gonna be on heat for too long, but you gotta be a little careful with certain things because some of the things will burn in the pan. I've got onion powder here. I'm gonna go with a bit of that on top. I'm gonna go with a little bit of garlic powder as well. I do have fresh garlic here, and I think I'm gonna make some of that with green beans. So actually, I may just do the fresh garlic, but a little bit of onion powder there, and a little bit of paprika, I think, because I really like that combination. Now, paprika is one of those things you got to be kind of careful about because it may burn in your pan. So just this is not necessarily something that I would do right now if you don't have a bit of experience in the kitchen. If this is your first time trying something like this, I would say maybe leave the paprika off and you can add it later for a different effect, but this has treated me fine in the past. I'm not, like I said, super concerned about this being very even because I'm just gonna go ahead and throw it in here, and once it's properly cooked, I'm gonna chop it all up anyway. I was gonna say, this would be a pretty wild time for my stove not to be working. Okay, so I've got this all seasoned up. Like I said, looks kind of ugly right now, does not matter in the least. If I were going for something pretty, I would probably just try to, instead of slicing and then pounding out flat, I would probably just try to pound a little bit on the thicker side of the chicken just to get it a little bit more consistent thickness wise. Because again, you're working with the chicken, but as much as that, you're working with the water inside the chicken. And just think about the rate at which water heats up. The more that you boil water, the more that you cook, the more you'll get used to that idea. But the water, the liquid inside the chicken is going to get hot a lot faster at the thin sides, and it's going to take a while to get into the inside of thicker stuff. So that's why you want to be paying attention to water in general. Now, I want this to preheat a little bit before we actually get in. So sometimes I'll just grab a little bit of the moisture from the chicken and sort of see how we're faring here. And yep, we got a sizzle off of that. So I'm going to put this stuff in, seasoning side down, because then that will expose the unseasoned side, and I can just season this right in the pan. Ooh, it smells good. It smells quite good. I want a little bit of that fat to be underneath this when I put it down, because that will help it not to stick. So, I don't know how well you can hear this. Let me lean in close. Okay, and in the future, don't do that. What I just did, that was kind of dumb. I just got my face close to hot oil. So yeah, don't do that. I'm just gonna I'm gonna unclip this for all my future sound bits. There we go. That's kind of nice. It's kind of nice. Let's see. Monkey says, thank you, it was delicious. Yeah, Orly Rose said the pork chops looked fantastic. And Monkey said, thank you, it was delicious. Unfortunately, a little overcooked from where I like it. Rose says, pork for me is like, I'm raw, 10 milliseconds later, dry as heck. Yes, so that is something that if you don't like pork, that is totally fine. But make sure you don't actually like it. Make sure that that's actually a true thing, because, oh, Dahlia, hello, good to have you here. Hold on, Dahlia, if you've just jumped in, here's a little bit of that sweet action. Hold on. There we go. That's for you, Dahlia. Yeah, pork is something that I had a lot of fairly dry pork when I was younger. My family really liked this smoked pork chops thing, and it was okay, but like I would have just done chicken and rice any day over that. And then I realized it's because we were making, fairly thin pork chops, and we were making them pretty dry. And a lot of that is not for lack of skill. It's because kids like really, really won't eat stuff like that if it's not like fully cooked. And so we were dealing with a lot of that. But at the end of the day, I realized it's not that I don't like pork. As a matter of fact, I think pork is probably like honestly my #1 favorite. You just have to make sure it's cooked nicely, which is to say not overcooked. Okay, now I'm going to revisit some of this stuff here in just a moment. Another quick kitchen tip. This one's going to be literally very quick. I've got this. This is a cutting board, and it doesn't have any like rubberized anything to it. Wet paper towel, just like damp paper towel on the counter with this. Now it's not going to slide nearly as easily. Let's see. Jem says using a lid can really help with pork. Yeah, just in general, like honestly, the best thing you can do, meat thermometer. This thing, I would say, like, this might even be better to get before you go for a fancy knife. If you're looking for like kitchen equipment to get and make a bit of an investment, I might even go with one of these before I go with a fancy knife, because this, I mean, you won't just be more accurate with things with this, you're gonna learn more because you know precisely what it feels like when different proteins are different temperatures. You will learn that much more quickly if you've got one of these. So I would go with one of these. You know, I would start with, I mean, you gotta start with some kind of pan, some kind of skillet. Cast iron is good. Stainless is probably your best bet. Non-stick is okay. I would say maybe non-stick #2, but as long as you have a functional knife, I would say before you get a great knife, get one of these first. This is a, I guess I should say what it is. Mine is Thermopop, but a meat thermometer. Food thermometers are really important to a lot of cooking, but especially with meat. I just said some stuff out loud there. Did that all make sense? Okay, now I'm noticing that the liquid, the water, but liquid in general, that is inside my chicken is not deglazing my pan how I was kind of anticipating, which means that deglazing is a process that I'm going to show you in just a second, as a matter of fact. I'm going to move this over to the side here. There's all that fond still down there. It's still on the bottom, and if it stays down there on the bottom too long, it's going to burn. I'm going to do something called deglazing. This is water. I'm throwing a little bit of water in there. I'm going to be honest, that was too much water. That's fine. You know, I'm going to be I'm going to be a little frustrated about that, but that's okay. Typically, I would not do nearly that much. I wanted just enough, like maybe a tablespoon or 2 of water to jump in there and deglaze the bottom of that pan, so that instead of like sticking on there and burning, I want to protect all that fond, because that is like really, really nicely cooked food bits. The reason that the outside of steak tastes so good, the reason that the outside of like a nicely done chicken tastes so good, is because of something called the Maillard reaction. And that is stuff on the bottom that has really undergone that process severely. And like I said, as long as it's not black and like smelling burned, it might even be putting off a little bit of stuff that looks a lot like smoke. It might even smell a little smoky, but if you're not smelling it and going like, ooh, that's burned, then you might be in good shape there. Like I said, I used too much water, but you can see how it kind of pulled off the fond, F-O-N-D, the fond at the bottom of the pan there, and that is going to hopefully keep it from burning a little bit longer. Now, it'll deglaze the bottom of my pan, great, but it's also going to deglaze my chicken a little bit, which is not as great. So that's why I'm a little mad that I used too much water. Again, it's okay, because we're still preserving a lot of that flavor. But this stuff that you learn with water is going to be helpful not just for the cooking process, but also for the cleaning up process. Because as you just saw, did you see that pan was hot? It had all that stuff on there. If you are a very, very amateur home cook, you might have been looking at that thinking that is going to be the biggest pain in the butt to clean off. As you just saw, there's a great and easy way to clean it that will get you like 90% of the way there before you ever take it to the sink. And that is to deglaze. Now, we actually had like a decent bit of fond in here, and it is making like my deglazing made an almost like a syrupy sauce in here, which is great. That's going to serve me just fine, as long as it doesn't burn. Which is it's not difficult. Just remember, you can protect some of it by using a little bit of water. if it looks like you've got stuff stuck to the bottom that isn't just brown, but it's actually starting to get very, very dark and black. So I protected it there by just getting it up off the bottom there and putting that water in, because water is going to absorb heat really nicely, really slowly, instead of the fond, which is just going to absorb the heat directly and start to burn. Right now my heat is at like medium high, a little bit north of medium. Let's see. Gems says, I've learned by watching color, which is, that is pretty nice. That is definitely a good way to do it, and that is the way that you will have to do it if you don't have something like this. But the color, depending on how slowly you're cooking, can actually be a bit of a, it can lie to you sometimes, which I think for people with a ton of experience, that doesn't matter. You're going to be able to just go in there and take care of business. Like, you will know the rate at which you're cooking, you know what the heat you're cooking at. That will serve you just fine, and I'm guessing it serves Gems just fine. If Gems is doing stuff like saving off pork fat to make soup, I think Gems probably learned just fine. But if you are just learning, if you cook at a super high temperature, if you're cooking up at medium high like I am, or even higher for something like a stir fry, if you put a big sort of a relatively thick piece of protein in here like this, or even, you know, if you've got like a pork chop that's big and thick, or a steak or something, the color might lie to you a little bit. The outside is going to get dark, and the inside, because remember, you're trying to heat water. Remember how slowly water boils. You're trying to heat the water all the way through, and so you might get the outside really hot. As a matter of fact, you might get it all the way to burning before you've heated the water inside all the way to the center. And so that's why I try to be careful. Like I said, I have no issues with those of y'all like Gems who have learned that way. That is going to serve you just fine if you learn like that. But if you are learning now, I think it's handy to start with one of these, and that way you can get a real strong sense for what it feels like, because that to me is the most, the sort of best indicator now. I can do it without, I'm going to use this today, but I can do chicken just fine without it. I don't cook a ton of beef right now, and I don't even cook a ton of pork, but I would say in order, I cook quite a bit of chicken, a little beef, or a little pork, and very rarely beef. But this is still too soft, a little bit too soft, but what I'm going to do is I've got a list of temperatures right here. The temperature that I want this to be is, I want it to be 165. But, and I am not a professional. Professional food safety people will definitely tell you, you want to make sure that you have hit 165. People who work in kitchens a lot will probably tell you that you want to take it off about 10 degrees, 10 or less degrees before then, because you're trying to get the center temperature. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in here in the thickest part and try to get my temperature. I'm looking at 150, which means that we are right there in great territory. And so I'm going to pull this off now. Even though like I said, I use too much water at the bottom, so my underside is not going to get quite as nicely done, but I still haven't burned that fond, which means that flavor, it's not on my chicken right now, but it's still there. It's still ready for me to use it. And like I said, I've been doing a ton of talking, which means I have not been getting my other stuff ready here like I need to. So I'll be right back. I just need to get this chicken something to rest on. I really like something like this. This is from our toaster. It's a nice little, like, I think these are like a quarter sheet pan. I really want one of these not associated with the toaster, but it had stuff toasted onto it, so I wrapped it all in tin foil so that it would hold things really nicely, because this chicken, as it is cooling, is gonna lose some juice. All right, so I'm gonna put this, I'm just gonna sort of get this, I'm gonna put it out of the way. This is what I'm working with so far. I'm at a good temperature. It is ready to come off. It is going to continue to heat in that center. The outside is gonna, remember, we're dealing with water. I'm gonna shut this off so it doesn't burn on me. Remember, we're dealing with water, and water, it's a little bit like a battery for heat. It will take charge, and then it will sort of continue to carry that charge in a way. So we heated a lot of the water on the outside layers of the chicken, and that water is gonna continue to pass that heat on into the center layers of the chicken. So that is why we took that off about 10 degrees earlier than we want, because that is going to continue to cook through. 10 degrees or less I will tell you. And if you're not sure, or if you're cooking at a really low temperature, maybe closer to 5 degrees, I would say. So we've got all this in here right now. Doesn't that look like a mess to those of you who might not be doing a lot of cooking for yourselves, right? That looks messy. That looks kind of nasty. Well, two things. A, you're wrong. B, that is flavor, and it is easy to clean off. Y'all saw what I did with the deglazing earlier. I'm going to do it again here in a moment. But for right now, I think I'm just going to let that sit. I'm going to let that sit over on the side here because typically, and the intent was to do this at the same time. That's really what I should have done. Instead of doing a lot of talking, I should have had my beans going. So remember, I washed my knife. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to get these beans working. And as a matter of fact, these chicken breasts turned out to be like some of the bigger ones. I asked for 2, and you never know if you're going to get like 2 huge ones or a medium one and a huge one or what. But I'm going to go in here and get my beans processed. I just want to clip off the ends of these. And then I'm going to get these cooked. Ideally, I would want these to be starting to cook while I am working on the chicken there. But I didn't, and that's okay. It will just help with the efficiency of this dish in the future. So if y'all are doing a lot of home cooking, and especially, I mean, I think obviously efficiency is really important for chefs at any level, but it's a kind of a different kind of efficiency that you need when you are doing home cooking. It's an efficiency, I think in professional kitchens, it's a lot of efficiency that is dependent upon you like working on a lot of other things kitchen related. Whereas I think home cooking efficiency is you working on a lot of other things that may be totally unrelated. And I really thoroughly cleaned my countertop, so I'm just going to dump this out here. I thoroughly cleaned my countertop before this stream, so I'm just going to dump those out and use this for my beans. Yeah, like I said, we're working with water. Water is not an ingredient, it is a tool. I really want to tell y'all, because it's embarrassing and I think it'll entertain you to know. I really did like spend months thinking about that visual gag, like, oh man, if I ever do a cooking stream, I'm gonna get to do this whole thing where I take the water and I move it over. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be very informative. It's very visual for our visual learners. It's gonna be dope. Ridiculous. But no, I've been excited about this stream for a while. Okay, so I've got most of my ends off. Again, if I were trying to make this especially pretty, I would be very sure I've got my ends off. But right now, if I have to go in here with my fork as I'm eating the thing, and I kind of look down in there, I see a few untrimmed tips. Maybe it's fine. It's probably fine. I'm just pulling these out the ends here. Beans are a little tedious, I'm gonna be honest with y'all, but that's okay. Green beans are. That's okay, and they are going to really bulk out this dish, which is delicious. I got a couple that I don't want to see in the final product there, so I'm gonna move those over. These nasty lads. I don't need any of you involved with my skillet today, gentlemen. You are all uninvited. You're not going to the ball, I'm afraid. Rolet says, I never cut the ends off my beans. I just cook them as normal. Is there a reason the ends are usually cut off besides just having a clean look? Yeah, because depending on how cleanly they were pulled off the plant originally, sometimes they'll have a little bit of stem in there, which the transition between the part of the bean that's close to the stem and the actual stem goes from pretty edible to very woody. And so that is why. You know, something like, let me see, what's a good example? Something like this, totally fine. You're not going to have an issue with that bean right there. That's going to be very comfortable to eat, even if it wasn't trimmed. But something along these lines, yeah, probably not so much. You don't want to get a mouthful of that. So, yeah, I'm trimming the ends off my beans. I'm trimming the ends off my beans. Jem says, from what I know, just part of cleaning them and cutting the stems off. Yeah, it's just sort of a part of the process for most folks, I think. This one was like, it's already a little shorty, but I just want to make sure to get any kind of oxidized ends off. It doesn't look like it's not in bad shape. It's just a little oxidized. It's going to be a little tougher to chew through. All right, there we go. I got some beans ready. I'm going to use, I was going to use my little cast iron here, but this probably isn't the most efficient thing. It would be fine, but I think I'm going to go with my nonstick instead. Now, this nonstick is a ceramic that I've had for quite a long time at this point. And as such, the inside has taken on like some weird discoloration. It still works pretty well as a nonstick, but as a matter of fact, I would definitely recommend ceramic nonstick. It's not as good with something called thermal shock. That means that if you have it really hot and you shock it with cold water, there's a chance you're going to damage that nonstick coating on it. But in general, I've been a big fan of it so far. I just tend to not use it for stuff that I'm going to have to make really hot and then suddenly make really cold. All right. Pulled my trash can underneath so I can just dump the stuff off the counter right into it. Going to, let's see, do I still need this? I do still need this. So I'm going to keep my paper towel there. It's a little wobbly now, but that's okay. I'm going to get that started. What do I need? I need butter. There we go. I managed to pick up unsalted butter. As a matter of fact, this stuff is not terribly cold right now, so it's just easier to work with when it's cold because I can just slice into it. Let's see. Let's see. Good Courage says, yeah, I've killed so many pans before realizing that. Yeah, and it can be especially important when you are working with something like the Teflon nonstick, because if you start to see your nonstick pans are kind of like crusting off, if you're seeing some of that nonstick coating start to sort of like peel out of place, you want to get rid of that stuff because your nonstick pans, that nonstick coating is going to end up in your food, and you definitely don't want that. So I've got some butter here in my pan. It doesn't really matter if I've preheated this or not. At this point, I'm just going to get this butter down to a nice point where it has started to bubble. Now, I've tried it with brown butter before, which means take your butter just a little beyond bubbling and actually start to let it brown some of the solids that are in there. Because there are solids in butter, believe it or not. Again, I know I'm talking to a fairly wide audience here, so some folks are going to know that, some folks are not. So I'm sort of speaking to folks who may or may not know it. There are tiny little solids in here, and they are going to be able to brown a little bit, but you've got to be really careful. This is not something you necessarily want to do maybe this is not something you want to do while other stuff is going on if this is your first time. But if I'm going to be browning this butter, I'm going to let it brown a little bit. I'm going to go for it. It's pretty good with beans. It gives it a nice little nutty flavor. As a matter of fact, there are some folks who have used brown butter to really great effect in baked goods. It goes from, you know how baked goods are kind of a nice little comfortable, they're a nice cozy sort of flavor. That nuttiness from browned butter as opposed to regular unbrowned butter, that can take it from pretty cozy to really very like mysteriously cozy, surprisingly cozy. So, I don't want to pull this off the heat quite yet, but I'm going to show you this is bubbling a little bit. Like I said, I'm at medium heat right now. Good Courage says, over time, my chemical constituency has become 100% butter. You're going to have to check your cholesterol, I think. Ooh, yes, indeed. Jem says, ooh, I almost lost it with my roommate when she used my crepes pan to fry chicken. Yes, there are different uses for different things. I would say you can tie the different uses to heat. If you're doing something with super high heat, like crazy high heat, you either want to go with a stainless or possibly even better, a cast iron. Because cast iron, when you've got crazy high heat, oftentimes you want it to be consistently heated and there might be some big hot spots. So cast iron is great because it will take the heat in at the bottom, and before it reaches the actual inside of the pan, you know what? Let me go in here. Ooh, actually, this is why I brought this. Dun, da, da, da. Dun, da, 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 da. I've got my little whiteboard here, and I'm gonna do some drawing on it for you. And this is an instance where it's not water, but it can still be helpful to think of as water, honestly. You can still think of it a little bit like water because it's going to move in similar ways, although quicker. So you've got your cast iron pan, and if you have got, right, you've got your cast iron pan, which looks roughly like this, I think is an okay approximation. When you've got a really thin pan, especially if y'all are using like an aluminum pan, which I wouldn't recommend because it's going to make you think you're a worse cook than you are. Okay, and actually I want to make sure I'm not distracting myself too much from this because this has just gotten to kind of the brown stage, which means we need to be careful because now the water in that has officially sort of moved to the proper state. I am going to give these a quick toss in this to distribute it around. I am adding new things, which is going to, it means that there is going to be this sort of process here. While it was starting to get pretty hot, I gotta be careful it's getting pretty hot because it might overcook my butter. Now I can sort of relax on that a little bit because I've added some cold stuff in there, or some lukewarm stuff, cold relative to the pan, and that will, that'll start to slow down the process that butter was getting heated up with. Now this is unsalted butter, so I've got my, I love this little butter dish, or this little salt dish. This is a little pinch bowl for salt. I am going to salt these beans because this is an unsalted butter. And in general, I'm going to be kind of careful because I don't necessarily want to like really over salt. I don't want to get each of the individual parts of this pretty salty because then when it comes together, they're all going to be pretty well salted and the composite of them is going to be too salted. Now, you can use sound as well. You hear that sound? That is water boiling. It's water boiling in tiny little spots, but that's water boiling, and that means this is too hot. So I'm just going to knock my heat down a little bit. I'm going to give this another little toss. There we go. And as you can hear, I'm going to move my mic down toward it. It's talking to me a little bit, and that's okay. I just don't want it to talk to me too much. If it starts to sound spitsy rather than just a nice little if it starts to sound like it's actually spitting at me, like I should be able to hold my hand over here and not feel anything spitting up onto my hand. And that's where we're at. It does sound like it's continuing to heat up a little bit, so I'm going to nerf that heat down even slightly further. But to get back to my drawing here, right, we have got your thin little aluminum pan. Like I said, your thin little aluminum pan, it is two things. It is very cheap, and it is going to make you think you're a bad cook. Because when heat goes into it, heat comes from the center generally, right? If you're using, especially if you're using gas. Now, if you're using like a convection cooktop, it might be a little bit different, but in general, you're going to find a lot of your heat comes from the center. And if it moves through this, it moves pretty much straight into it. And so you're going to have this big hot spot in the center. Anything over on the sides is going to cook up a lot slower. The stuff in the middle is going to get too hot. As a matter of fact, the outer layer of whatever you're cooking, this sort of lower level is going to be, it's not going to have a lot between it and the direct heat, which means this part of even something in the center of your dish is going to cook a lot faster. Am I low enough down here? Yeah, I need to adjust a little. So even just this lower part is going to cook a lot faster than your outer part. This is why cast iron is a big deal to people who like cast iron. It's this thick stuff. As a matter of fact, it is, the way that it is cast means that the heat is going to move through it more slowly. And not only is it slower, but when heat moves in here, it's going to bounce around inside here and it's going to get distributed. So when it comes out, it's coming out over here, all the way around. So it distributes the heat more evenly. That's why people like cast iron. I can talk about cleaning cast iron later as well, because I know this is the big reason people don't like cast iron, but we can talk about that later or at a different time. But this is why cast iron's nice, and this is why even my stainless steel here, it is a heavy bottom stainless steel pan. So If you are wondering why you are constantly like burning stuff, if you're using a cheap pan, a cheap super thin like aluminum pan, this might explain why. So do yourself a favor. Good Courage says, please do. What are you talking? What's the please do bit? Good Courage says, Thursdays I might throw spaghetti and store-bought meatballs into a pot night because I have band practice, so I'm getting my cooking fix here. Hey, two things. First of all, that's totally fine, right? I think you're doing cooking there, right? They're store-bought meatballs, sure, but you're doing some cooking there. And it's also like, I think cooking is good. I think it's good to understand where your food comes from and how it's made and how you might make it better for yourself, because I think for sake of convenience, we start to forget like, certain parts of this are not nearly as complicated or time consuming as they seem. So it can be good to like maybe try one time making a huge batch of meatballs and sticking those in the freezer so that next time you want meatballs, you don't even need to go to the store. And you're gonna get a much better meatball because you've made it. Good Courage says, I want to love cast iron, but I despise cleaning it. I use heavy bottom stainless. I put cast iron in the dishwasher. So there is that. Let me tell you something right now. I would like to show you my cast iron. I made eggs with this morning. I'm going to give you some angles of this. Hopefully that will sort of give you a pretty good sense that this is nice and clean. I made eggs with this morning, and the cleaning process was a rinse and a paper towel to pull it out. I did a little bit of scraping with one of these wooden tools, a little bit, because there was a little bit of stickage. But like I said, eggs are a pretty good indication of sticking, right? It's not that this is necessarily a great pan. This is a Lodge cast iron, which is considered a pretty solid one as cast irons go. But it's how you treat cast iron. It requires some technique, which if you enter the kitchen, you are entering a realm where technique reigns. But it is not difficult technique, and it is not time-consuming technique. There's a lot of talk about like treating your cast iron or seasoning cast iron. Even that is not as nearly as big a deal as people think it is. I think there's this impression that there's like, it's this whole production. You got to make sure that you've got an oven that can get hot enough. You got to make sure to use the right kind of oil, etc. I find if you do a little bit of seasoning regularly, you're going to be in a lot better position. Y'all are going to have to remind me to talk about seasoning later on, I think, because, or like cast iron in general. I'm going to take a quick bite of this bean to see how we're doing here. Let's see. It's still very crunchy. I'm going to let this continue to go. Now, typically, I would have had these started on a different burner while my chicken was going, but I'm doing a lot of talking. Now that I've got these going, I typically would already have my my shallots done, but I'm talking, so I didn't. I'm gonna eat the rest of this because it's fine. It's just pretty crispy still. But we gotta move on with the recipe here. This is not a shallot. Typically, I would use a shallot for this. This is not one of those things. This is a small onion. This is just a small yellow onion. But shallots are what make this. And as you can see, I'm combining a lot of different techniques here. I have made bacon, which is kind of you start with a cold pan. You're trying to render out fat. That's one technique that I've learned. Protein in general is just kind of its own technique. Just getting a nice pan sear on stuff. That's its own technique. And a lot of that is about working with temperature. It's about preserving the fond, because that's super helpful. Veggies, right? Even on the stovetop, it's its own technique, although I think roasted veggies in the oven are even better a lot of times. Good, fantastic. Now, this is where we get into sauce territory. I spent a ton of time learning how to make sauces and watching a lot of videos, doing a lot of practice. Basically, anytime I did any protein at the stove, I would try to make sure that even if I wasn't really going to use the sauce, I tried to make one because it will massively improve the food that you're making, and it is inexpensive and easy to do. You just have to know a few things about it. Now, is this the right answer? I just put this back in here in spite of the fact that I just had it in chicken. Probably not. I'm going to be okay with it. what you want to do if you want to start off with pan sauces. Now this is making a weird noise. Hold on. Can you hear it? The screams of the damned in there in my in my damned beans. Okay, these are starting to be, I think we're in the right territory. I'm really bad with beans. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I'm real bad with beans. And what I'm gonna do with these, actually, I'm gonna get them up to the right temperature, or even maybe just slightly underdone. Nope, still needs a little bit of time. And it's probably because it's probably because I knocked my temperature down. Maybe a little too low, but I'm gonna shock these. I'm gonna blanch these. I'm gonna put them in ice water, which means, which means I should probably have ice water ready, huh? Yeah, that'd be a good call, Sam. Doesn't need to be a ton. Doesn't even need to be terribly, terribly icy. But I just started experimenting with this recently and realized, there's something to this. It is not going to be substantially different from pulling it off, at least in my very infrequent, because I've only done this a couple of times thus far. It's not going to be so super different from how they would come off the stove anyway. You're not going to pull these off and then blanch them and notice that it's so different from pulling them off and not blanching them until you try to do these as leftovers. And then you're going to find that the ones that you blanched are still about as crispy as you remember. And the ones that you did not blanch, those suckers are going to be mushy and nonsense. So that is what I've found thus far. I think the people who have expertise with this would probably say that there are more sort of upfront benefits as well, but I can certainly speak for the leftovers aspect, which is super important to me as, again, a home cook. Leftovers is actually, I would say, one of the few spots where it is more of a burden for a home cook than a pro cook. Jem says, onions and garlic make the meal. Oh boy. Yeah, you definitely did remind me about the garlic. I typically don't do garlic in this one because it doesn't typically need it so much. But I think if I were to do it, I probably would have put those in slightly before the beans while I was browning that butter and done it like that. I think I'm just going to hold off for right now. I think I'm going to hold off. So let me return to my sauce discussion. We're talking sauces. If you want to get started with sauces, I would encourage you to sort of pursue three things. Remember your water content, alliums, and wine/sugar. All right, so your water content, we're going to talk about that for just a moment. I lost a bean into the stove there. That's no good. And these will surely be done by now. So I'm going to take these. Dunk them right in there. Now, does that mean that some of the seasoning is going to come off the outside? Yes, but I am not super concerned about that right now. I just want to make sure that these are getting shocked from super high, cooking temperature on down, because what this apparently does, I only found out the reason for this fairly recently. Apparently what this does is to either stop the production or stop the processes of a certain enzyme that is going to try to soften those beans up even further. So I just got these into a bunch of ice water. I am taking remember you're working with water inside the food. So the water on the outside of this bean is now being cooled off, but we need to cool it off to the point where it's actually going to cool off all the way down into the center of the bean. So it doesn't need to stay in here for a super long time. I am going to now drain this. Do I have my little pour off colander? I am not sure. Oh, here it is. Okay, we're good. These are super nice, by the way. It's a little pouring colander. You just put it in the edge of your dish and then angle the dish instead of pouring the whole thing into something. I have found that I really enjoy this tool. Because A, it means fewer dishes, and B, if I can avoid cleaning a colander, I will do that every time. There's actually still a little bit of ice in here, but that's going to be okay. We're going to reheat this whole thing later. Like I said, I typically like to put my sort of works in progress up there. Actually, this reminds me, I got to check on my phone to make sure my battery's still okay. And then I promise, I swear upon my name and the name of my house and the name of my father's house, I am going to talk about sauces. I will do it. Okay, we're at 30% now, so we're still doing okay, but I definitely need to be watching that. So, sauces, like I said, watch your water, alliums, and wine/sugar. So, what am I talking about? Water. Water, the first bit of the importance of water is making sure your fond does not burn, because this is your first ingredient of a good sauce. At least a good pan sauce. I should clarify that. A good pan sauce begins with this right here. That's right. Something's gonna happen with this, and it's not you spending 45 minutes over your sink trying to scrub it out. This is all gonna come out super easily, and it's gonna be freaking delicious. So, usually, I would have this done. I'm gonna leave this off for right now, because I know I'm gonna talk long enough that I will burn that. But usually, I'll try to have this part done. Need some water. I also need to like breathe for a second. Y'all know me, I get super stream brain, which to me just means like I get really focused and I get really like intent on not letting there be a dull moment. It serves me great sometimes and not so great other times. Just gonna take a moment here. So, I don't want this to burn, so I'm not gonna leave this on the heat, but typically I would try to have this stuff ready before this stuff burns. And so when I pull that chicken out, I can literally turn the heat off, this will still be warm, and I would just chuck my ingredients straight in there. So I'm gonna cut these up, but then before I actually put things in there, I'm gonna let this heat up a little bit, because that heat is an important part of the deglazing process. And the deglazing is what I did before when I poured some water on here and made all that stuff on the bottom come up off the bottom. So, like I said, water. But alliums. Alliums include onions. I want to say garlic is in there. I can tell you certainly that shallots are in there. Also, I say certainly, but then somebody's going to run up in here and be like, actually, no. But onion type products, I would say your spring onions, like your green onions, those might be a slightly worse option for this. If you do, I would say maybe use just the thicker parts. But your best option for this is definitely going to be shallots. Shallots are going to provide a better depth of flavor. They're going to bring a little bit more sweetness. I'm just putting some little slits in here because it's going to help me to chop this. It's going to help me to unskin this onion. I have a yellow onion here because I couldn't find shallots at the market where I was at. So I'm using these instead. So this will be okay, but it's not going to bring quite the same depth of flavor, which is, I mean, shallots, like, I can't really undersell shallots here. Shallots are awesome. If you're trying to do something like this, you're going to discover that shallots are awesome. It was something I never really messed with before, but they are little purple guys. I would say definitely go ahead and Google them if you're not familiar. I'm gonna give this a quick mince, and I am processing this yellow onion the same way that I would process a shallot, which is to say, I'm going to slice all around the radius. I don't think there's any reason with onions specifically to go in at the sides. I think it's important in things that don't already have striations sort of built into them, but that's just me. For any of you cooks that are going to wonder why I didn't chop my onion quite properly. But shallots will change your life. If you are a home cook and you have not messed with them before, but you don't mind working with alliums in general, like I said, onions, I believe garlic as well is an allium, but it truly, shallots will change the shallot's going to change the whole game for you. Good Courage says, I've always used just onions and garlic. I'll try shallots. Do it. Do it. It is a revelation. There's a reason why you're going to find shallots in lots of kitchens. And Gems, don't worry. I'm saving all of this for stock. This all is going to go into a little pan here. I'm actually realizing I'm not going to use this trash bag much because a lot of the trash that I've produced has just gone straight into the can there. But things like paper towels, etc., it's nice to just have a little paper bag up here on the counter for trash. Even sometimes plastic will go in there, non-recyclable plastic, etc. Let's see. Proteus Spade says, I feel very strongly about cast iron. I was raised with it, and it even has nutritional benefits. I can't cook on nonstick, but since I moved to a house with an electric stove for the first time. I found it doesn't keep nearly as even heat as it did on gas. Very frustrating. Spouse and I are considering buying some stainless steel and giving up. Maybe it's just a bad stove. Never dealt with electric much before. That is one of the big drawbacks of honestly, I really prefer gas over anything else. I know it's not practical in all locations, but yeah, that's one of the big drawbacks of gas is that you can't use cast iron on it. And a lot of you might be saying, well, isn't that a big drawback of cast iron that you can't use it on that? I would say, I mean, prioritize for better cooking in general. And I really think cast iron can make that happen. For anything for high temperatures, it's especially good for frying. Again, because of that even temperature, you're not going to burn parts of your oil while other parts aren't getting properly heated. Although I would say that's a fairly narrow problem. But just in general, I really am a big fan of cast iron, but it is really tough to do on certain electrics. Let's see. Cobra says, I watched a TV show when I was little, and one of the characters like to say there's no such thing as too much garlic. Yes, I think a lot of people say that. And frankly, it's not so much a lie. It's one of those things, I mean, it also isn't quite true. There's definitely such a thing as too much garlic. But it is one of those things where like it will become intense to the point where it might overcome some of your other ingredients. But it was like, oh boy. Y'all just brought back a memory for me. When I was, I'm about to put this butter back in the fridge because this actually needs to be cold for a later part of this sauce process. And I want to restate, this whole thing is going much slower for me than it normally would. Typically, I would probably be done with the sauce by now and I would be assembling the final dish. This is a pretty solid like weekday meal. Because there are a couple of moving pieces. As long as you can do both at the same time, if you can get to that point, this becomes a very quick process. And I'm going to tell you that story in just a second. But just in general, like you can definitely consider this, but especially the sauce portion of it. The sauce portion, as long as you remember to chop a little bit of this while you are cooking your protein, while you're cooking your chicken or beef or pork, whatever. I've never done it with fish, but that would probably work, I imagine, as well, though there might be different fond available. I don't know. I can very confidently say it works with chicken, beef, and pork, though. If you can do a little bit of this chopping, you're not even going to add any time to your cooking process because this is all going to happen very quickly. You'll be able to watch that happen. So I'm just mincing this up really nice and fine, about as small as I can get it because it's going to go into a sauce. But this story regarding too much garlic, I had a friend when I was in elementary school, and I spent a ton of time at his house. He turned out to be a real bastard, but his parents were pretty great, and his mom would make us food pretty regularly. And so I would just like eat dinner down at their house, that kind of thing. And at one point, they made garlic chicken. And so this mom of my friend had made this garlic chicken. I'd had a couple of things at their house. I don't think she was a very intelligent woman. She was a very intelligent, like, working professional. She was, I'm not gonna say what field she was in, but like she had a doctorate degree. But I think she didn't like, cooking maybe wasn't her thing so much. She made a couple of things that I really enjoyed. But just in general, like she did some experiments. And she made this garlic chicken that it was a sort of thing wherein you really identify the order that those words came in. It wasn't chicken with garlic, it was garlic chicken. This sucker had so much garlic. It was like she had taken, like, I would say per chicken breast, we're talking like 3, maybe 4 tablespoons of minced garlic. And I think she got it from one of those little minced garlic containers that you can get. It was so much garlic, and then it was pretty much just oven baked. But you pulled that out, that was too much garlic. Eye-wateringly garlic. And it got pretty quiet when we launched in because I think we all sort of embarked into this meal and we were like, oh boy, this is dinner tonight. How am I going to make it through? And the thing that broke the silence was the dad, her husband, saying pretty quietly, "This is good. You can really taste the garlic." It was like, I think he might have been trying to like, he was not cruel to her, but like, I think he might have been like trying to poke a little bit. And it was all I could do to not freak out, because it was hilarious at the time. Just like, oh my guy, yes, you most certainly can. Oh, you can taste the garlic, all right. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. It was natty. Okay, so we got these. Like I said, this should have been done before I was done cooking the protein, and the beans should have been going in parallel. But right now I've got the chicken done, I got the bacon done, I got the beans done. Now we're launching into sauce. So imagine, if you will, let's travel back in time to back when this was still hot. I'm gonna put this back on the heat here. I'm gonna get this hot again. But imagine this is not getting hot again. Imagine this is still hot. And we're gonna find that out by doing just the little drops of water. For instance, right now, put this in here. I put a little water in there. It's not bubbling, it's doing nothing. I wanna get it back up to temperature, because that's gonna be important to move this in the right way that it needs to be moved. And then I'm actually gonna shut the gas back off before I ever put this in here. So, parts of our sauce, and you can consider this a bit of a separate recipe, frankly. Our sauce ingredients include alliums. I'm not using nearly all of this. Cass just wanted me to make sure that I chopped it all up. I'm not using nearly all of this, but we've got our fond, we've got our allium, and then we need something sweet. Now, honey can be good, sugar can be good. Wine is great. Now, one more thing. I typically would use a red wine for this. You can use a white wine. This is going to give you a slightly less rich sort of experience. It is still going to break down the sugars that are in wine. There's a considerable amount of sugar in wine. The sweetness is a really important part of this. But these are our three ingredients. 1, 2, 3. Like I said, I would usually use red wine, but as I mentioned, wasn't able to get a few things at the market, so I am going with this instead. Let me clean up my workstation here so I look like a dang professional. I'm not a professional, so maybe this doesn't matter as much, but I still want to feel like a professional, you know what I mean? I want to look like one. I want to fake as one. I want to pretend I'm a professional. Proteus Spade says, my mom's amazing garlic bread. Melt butter. Mash raw minced garlic into a bowl of liquid butter. Spread onto a halved sourdough loaf. Put loaves back together. Bake long enough to toast. Very, very garlicky, very, very good. Yes, absolutely. And yes, good courage. I think there are a lot of pro chefs. Oh, okay, we got some bubbling on there. So that means this is definitely hot enough. My heat is back off now. I'm going to deglaze. Typically, I would use stock for this, like a chicken stock or a beef stock, something to match the protein that I used. In this case, I've got a special trick. So I am going to go ahead and deglaze just with water. For this amount, this is gonna be fairly rich, I think, but I'm gonna use like a 1/4 cup of water maybe on there right now. And these, like, you don't have to be super picky, but as you can see, I'm taking this water and I'm using it to deglaze the bottom of this. Now you can see how easily this is coming off. I'm putting like, here, I'll put 2 fingers of pressure on this thing. I look like a little pinger ninja, don't I? What? I don't even know what that is. Why did I say that out loud? But as you can see, I am not putting like a ton of pressure on this, and it's coming up really easy. You remember what that pan looked like before? Now this stuff is all nice and loose. You can use this trick even if you're not making a pan sauce. If you've got stuff on here, heat your pan, then scrape it. Heat your pan, deglaze it with some water, and then scrape it. And you are going to have a much better time. It does need to be like, when I say heat it, it needs to be enough to make water sizzle when it hits the pan. Definitely watch it. Don't just let that go, because it's only going to take a couple of minutes and you will burn the stuff even further. And once it's gone all black and carbonized, then you're going to have a real tough time, Captain. But no, if you've got some stuff just stuck to the bottom of your pan, use it. Use it in your food, by golly. But if it's stuck and you've already eaten your food, well, maybe you just need to get rid of it. Do some deglazing. It's going to help your cleanup process dramatically. So now I've got all that stuff full of flavor, and I've just moved that flavor into some water here. I am going to additionally use some wine. Oh shucks, I did this out of order. You know what? It doesn't matter. you know what I can do? I can turn this heat back on, and I am doing this process. I did this a little out of order. These should have gone in first. I should have, like I said, not using all of these, but these should have gone in first. So let me go ahead and backtrack a little bit here. I just want to do things properly. These are going to go on with a little bit of oil. If you've still got sufficient fat in there, like maybe a tablespoon or two for the pan, you won't need any additional stuff, but you might need a little bit of help, in which case I've got some canola here. You could use butter, but I think I've seen most people angle toward oil. So I'm getting some heat back underneath this, because I do want to make these kind of nice. I want to caramelize these slightly before I deglaze. So as you can see, I'm going to sort of use this as an opportunity instead of a drawback. I just did something out of order there. You can't reverse everything, but when it comes to water, you can do a lot. So I just deglazed, which is to add water and get a lot of the stuff that's stuck to the bottom collected into the water and off the pan. Now what I'm doing is I'm reducing. This is a process called reducing, and once again, we're talking water. Reducing means to apply heat to a liquid in order to remove some of the water, because this steam, this is all water that's coming off of this. This steam is just water coming out of there, which means you're using it as a tool to collect flavor, and then you're using it as a tool to sort of let that flavor condense back down. So in normal circumstances, I would have done this in the proper order, but I'm kind of glad I got the chance to talk about reducing. We're going to get to talk about it again in just a moment here, but as I cook this down, I want this to be at a bit of a simmer here. It definitely needs to be steaming, otherwise there's no water coming out of it. You're just making it warm. Because I'm watching this very closely, I don't mind if it's simmering pretty quickly, but I'm going to, I don't know if this is effective, but I kind of like to agitate it to let the steam kind of work its magic even more quickly. But I want to kind of get back down to, I don't need to get all the way to like the fond back on the pan, but I do want to at the very least get down to that kind of like thicker syrup. Because if I put these onions in right now, it's so wet. Wet with water and wet with oil are two different things. Wet with water, it just means these onions are kind of going to just boil. And so my allium is going to not be quite as caramelized, and instead it will still contribute flavor, but not quite the same flavor. So I'm letting this get down till it's a little less sort of like watery and a little bit more sticky. You'll be able to see, like, as you can see here, I let it sort of run down the pan. You see how slowly it runs down? As a matter of fact, I can kind of drag a spoon through it, and when I can really start to drag that spoon through, that's how we're going to know that we've evaporated out enough water. And I took it off the heat for a while there, so it got cooled off. It kind of nerfed my simmer. That's okay. While this is coming back up, I'm going to talk to Chad again for a little bit. Let's see. Good Courage says, seriously, Sam, if this was a semi-regular cooking stream, it would be incredible. I am glad you're enjoying it. I'm quite glad you're enjoying it. Orly Rose says, I've got a piece of what looks like chainmail in the shape of a washcloth, and you can use that on cast iron on a regular electric stove, but not on an induction. Oh, interesting. On a regular electric stove. Okay, so do you just like lay it down and then you put the cast iron on top of that? That could definitely work. I could see that working. I could definitely see that working. Okay. Oh, yo, this would be kind of fun. Oh, especially in this, okay, so Good Courage says, especially in this time frame, this is when I start cooking dinner. I think if I were to do this, it would be pretty fun to do it as like I will help you get your dinner ready. You can just follow me along with the stream. Okay, I'm gonna have to put that down in my notes later. Okay, so we can see this has come up to a syrup, okay? Before this burns, I wanna make sure that these go in. I'm gonna reduce my heat down to very low, but still on. So this is when I would typically put these in. So this, and again, these would typically be shallots instead of onions, but I just put these in. I'm gonna get them nicely mixed up. Remember, in this moment, this would not necessarily be a liquid here at the bottom, but that dark sort of crispy fond. Make sure that if you've still got the heat underneath this, you are still cooking it, so you wanna be careful about how quickly you're cooking it. If you got your onions in here and they're not releasing enough moisture, then I would say sacrifice the caramelization of the onions and throw some water in here to slow down that fond from burning. You want to get that deglazing moving a little quicker. The big priority here with a pan sauce: do not burn it. again, if I were doing this right, this would be a very quick process. And like I mentioned, you can consider this a bit of a separate recipe from the overall recipe because this is a slightly different process. This small chunk of it, I'm making chicken and some bacon and some green beans, and I'm making a pan sauce. And at the end, I'm going to add some other stuff to it, but try to consider just this portion, because just this portion here, like I said, I did a whole sort of, I did about a year of working really hard on sauces, especially pan sauces, and I learned a ton, and this is a really quick way to add to your sort of repertoire. And if you're making like stovetop chicken breast, you will take that from stovetop chicken breast to stovetop chicken breast that are just brutally good with a homemade pan sauce. So imagine now we are reset. Imagine the chicken has just come out about 1 minute ago. I've thrown my onions in here, my alliums, again, typically shallots. Start with shallots, and then I've done a lot of great stuff with just regular onions, with white onions, with a little bit of garlic, pick any single allium, and I've actually not gotten to a point where I have like mixed and matched alliums much, but I have done a lot of mixing and matching different alliums, different sugar sources between honey and wine, different deglazing liquids, including beer or wine or stock, etc. Okay, now, there we go. So I got a little bit of that syrup on here. If it needs a little bit of water to help out, just the number one priority is do not burn your fond. There we go. Now these are looking a little bit caramelized. They're a little soft. I would say consider your timing about 1 minute. This has been on medium since I got those onions in there because it didn't look like they were pulling up much off the bottom. So now they're on medium. Now, you should hear a little bit of that sound. They're whispering. You want to whisper, not a spit, but a whisper. And now I'm going to officially deglaze it. So you could ignore that first one. This is the real one. Again, this is my drinking water, but I'm not cooking this for any of y'all to actually eat. I'm using about a 1/4 cup of this. I'm going to, for first time's sake, for anybody who's just sort of learning along with me right now, I'm going to use about the same amount of wine. As I mentioned, I would typically use a red wine for this. That would be a little richer. You can use water. You can use stock. Stock will be even better than water because it will bring a bit of richness. But I've got a bit of a trick up my sleeve. I made myself some demi-glace. I don't know if it's pronounced demi-glace or demi-glaze. I think those are actually technically two slightly different things. I believe there are different sort of concentrations of the same idea. But I have used water. Like I said, you could use stock, wine, allium, and that would treat you just fine. I am going to kind of approximate that by using a homemade demi-glace that I have had in the freezer for a while and frankly really underused. Where are you? Oh, it best not be gone. Oh, where would it have gone to? Where would you be? Oh, you best, okay. Whew. Okay, so, demi-glace, I don't know which. This has actually got a bit of like freezer attitude on it, so that's a little unfortunate. Oh, and my freezer bag just done broke on me. That is subsequently also unfortunate. I may just have to cut this bag open in a moment here. Wheels are coming off. This is essentially a stock that got cooked way, way down, and then I froze it into ice cubes so that now I can take this and instead of a stock, which is going to bring a lot of flavor, a stock or a broth, either one of those will work for deglazing here. Instead of a stock or a broth, I can use water plus some of this. Now this is beef demi-glace, and I'm going to make because I'm going to be adding it to a lot of other stuff, I'm actually going to use a second cube of it here. That's 2 cubes to attach together, isn't it? I'm going to use 2 cubes of my demi-glace here. I made it at home. It is delicious. It will really add not just a lot of flavor, not just a lot of like really deep, rich flavor, because essentially what this is, if you take a broth or a stock, for any of you semi-pros listening. If you take a stock and you reduce it way, 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 way down until you get some really thick stuff, I'm talking stuff that you want to reduce it down until you can perceive the gelatin. So if I had this stuff just in a glass here, and I put it in the fridge, you can jiggle it around and it will move like Jello. That is how much you're cooking it down. That is the stage at which we get this to. So now we've deglazed, right? We have deglazed everything on the bottom, which means we're not at the risk of burning anything. There's plenty of fluid in here not to worry about burning. So I have got the heat now back up. I'm at medium right now. It's at a nice little simmer. And now I'm going to reduce this again. Before I was reducing to fix a mistake that I made. Right now I'm reducing to get to a nice sauce texture, a nice sauce consistency. And you can actually Google the word sauce consistency. And that will sort of give you an idea of what level you're looking to here. But there is a neat little trick. It involves a spoon. The spoon must be made of metal. But fortunately, most silverware is. You could probably manage this with like with a plastic one as well, but really your best bet is to use a metal spoon, and I'm gonna show it to you once this thing is at the proper consistency. Actually, no, even better. I will show you now what it looks like when it's not ready yet. Let me just go ahead and here stir this sauce around with this spoon. Stir it around. I'm not gonna shake it off. I want you to look at the spoon. You see on the back of that, it's wet, sure, but there's nothing there. If I were to sort of move my finger up the middle of it, just sort of wipe away whatever's there, you can see not much of a difference between where I wiped and where I didn't wipe. That is the change we're trying to bring to this. And again, we're using water as a tool. Water is going to take all of the flavors from the allium. It is going to helped to deglaze the pan and sort of suck up that flavor. We used water as a tool to bring all these flavors together and protect them from the heat. And now that it's safely sort of sitting in the water, we're going to reduce this. That's the process of pulling this water out by heating it. You can see all the steam that's leaving. We're going to take out that water, and by removing that water, we're going to get this down to a nice consistency, but it doesn't take any of the flavor with it when it leaves, which means we're concentrating that flavor. So if you've got like half water and half flavor, this is a super abstract version, a super dumbed down version, but if you've got half water and half flavor, and you remove, like I will say 1 part water, 1 part flavor, and you remove half that water, that means you've now got half a part water to 1 part flavor. You've really concentrated it. You've still got the 1 part flavor, but it's in a lot less water now, which means it's more concentrated. It's less sort of distributed out between a lot of water. It's trapped inside half as much water. And so it is going to maintain a lot of the great flavor, and it's going to focus it into a small amount of space. And that is how you sort of take this stuff from what normally might be just dirty pan that you would have to pull off in a really annoying and long process. I've got some onion skins. Gems, you don't have any use for onion skins, do you? I'm guessing no, but you never know. Maybe? I'm gonna toss these. Sidecar, love it. We are making a chicken bacon skillet. This is a meal that I am sure, I'm absolutely positive there are other versions of this elsewhere. This is something I did come up with independently. This is not a recipe that I found. It was just basically, I had been doing a bunch of work with pan sauces, and I wanted to try one where I added some heavy cream to it afterward and made kind of a cream sauce, and then went ahead and just chopped up some chicken, had some green beans, a little bit of bacon in there, and the composite of all these is 2 things. Delicious. Well, it's 3 things. It's delicious. It's a great opportunity to talk about a lot of the stuff that I've learned cooking. And thirdly, it is not very plate pretty. So when I'm done with this, you are all going to have to sort of expect it's going to come out looking. It's not going to look ugly, but it's definitely not going to look beautiful, right? I'm also very bad at plating just in general. It's something I would like to be better at, but I'm just not very good at it. So I am babysitting this. I'm taking really good care of this. I'm really paying attention to it. I'm kind of watching it the whole time here, which means that I don't mind that this is at a pretty brisk simmer. I don't mind that because I'm going to be here to keep an eye on it. If you are concerned, if you have to step away at all, definitely make sure instead of medium, which is what this heat is at right now, knock this down to like medium low. You want to knock this down if you're going to be walking away. And now I need to rehydrate. Good Courage says something with beans and chicken. Yes, yes indeed. This is chicken bacon skillet, and I really need to think of a better name for it because that sounds like something you would order at a Denny's and it would be bad. This is delicious and uses a lot of like really nice techniques. Let's take another look at our spoon test here. I'm gonna go ahead and stir this around. You can start to get a bit of an idea because as you can see, the water is moving more slowly, right? That's because it has become kind of syrupy with the things that are inside it. Including the demi-glace, including the wine that I added there, which is mostly evaporating off the liquids and some of that alcohol and becoming mostly just the sugars that are in there. You can see I'm going to collect it all at one end and watch how slowly it moves. It is not moving at normal water pace, right? If this were just brown water, like if this were full of iced tea or something, it would move much more quickly. But watch how slowly it moves. Right? Some of it moves quickly, but then you can see a lot of it is just sort of clinging there. That means we're approaching where we want to be here. I probably used too many onions in here. I don't mind. It's still going to be delicious because it's going to be mixed in with a bunch of beans and chicken and bacon. It's going to be fine. But I would say for your average pan sauce, if you weren't making the big skillet here that's eventually going to have heavy cream in it, maybe less of the your alliums here. So I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna stir this around real quick. I'm not gonna shake it off. Now look at what we got here. We got some stuff on there, and I'm not talking about the bits. I'm talking about the liquid. So don't just kind of ignore the bits there. But now when I do this, you can definitely tell. Maybe not on camera, but here. Let me get this a little closer. So this one's for Discord, and now for Twitch. I hope it's willing to focus for that. You can definitely tell there's a difference between the middle where I wiped off and the sides where I did not wipe off. It's getting a little clingier. That means it's getting thicker. That means it's getting more concentrated. It is more reduced. That is what you're looking for, but we're not quite there yet. We want to continue to lean into that. Now look, okay, now see how quickly that changed? It went from moving kind of like water, kind of like something less, but now watch how slowly it moves. Right? Real slow. That means we're getting close, and this means that we've got a lot less water in there. That means a lot less protection from the heat, so we got to be a little careful. Now, I'm going to do the spoon test one more time, even though I think we're probably going to be roughly the stage we want to be at here. Stainless steel pan is kind of nice because I can do the spoon tests like this. As you can see, I made this sort of trough in here, and like the Red Sea, it didn't just go crashing back into the middle. That's not a matter of how much stuff is in the pan. There's plenty of stuff in the pan to refill that, but it's just moving much more slowly. We've gotten this down to a nice syrupy consistency. I'm very confident this is done, so I'm actually going to turn the heat off here. But check out, oh yeah, baby. Oh yeah, baby. Okay, so let me go ahead and get some of this nice stuff onto my spoon here. And then I'm not going to shake this off. And let me show you what this does. Let me show you this. See that? See that? Yeah, it's got a lot of stuff on it. Yeah, it might not look perfectly appealing when it's just sitting there on the back of a spoon, but watch this. Huge difference. Left and right, that is all flavor juice right there, baby. That's all that accumulated fond. It's all the stuff that you've pulled out of your alliums. It's the sugars that you've gotten from your wine. Delicious. I'm going to give you another take here. Check this out. Huge difference left and right. I hope it shows up on camera. This is ready. I'm going to kill the heat. I am going to do something called mounting butter. I think I want to say I think it's beurre monté, but I'm not totally sure. I'm going to take, for this amount, I'm going to take about if I were just doing a pan sauce here, I would use a little less butter. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to kill this process. I still want this to be warm, but I don't want it to be hot. I am trying to end the cooking process right here. And what I'm doing is I have just added cold butter. And I've got a whisk here, as you can see, but you can use a fork or even just a spoon. The big secret is don't stop moving it because you've got a certain amount of water in there. You are going to rely on that water. Even though you cooked a lot of it out, you're going to rely on that water for something called an emulsion, which means I'm going to take this butter and I'm going to fully integrate it into this sauce. And by that, I don't mean there's going to be some sauce with some butter sort of like mixed in. An emulsion is something different. It's something slightly different. It's going to rely on some of the water in there. We want the butter to fully incorporate into the sauce. And when I would say it's going to be a lot easier to tell the difference with a sauce with less onion in there. I went with a lot because shallots are a little bit more powerful flavor, but you can tell the difference a lot easier when you don't have nearly as much going on with your onions. There's a huge difference between butter that has been properly integrated and hasn't been. If your pan sauce seems greasy instead of nice and thick and glossy, if it seems greasy, specifically if you can see separation between the sauce and the butter, if the butter is just sort of like hanging out in like a layer of fat, that just means you either have not whisked it enough, or maybe you need a little bit more water. As a matter of fact, it looks like I might need slightly more water. That means it's called breaking. And if your sauce has broken, it means you have probably either not whisked it quite enough, or you've reduced it down ever so slightly too much. I want to be careful. I do not want to do any more reducing here because I've done a lot of it today. About a tablespoon of water in there. I need enough water to make sure that my butter doesn't sort of sit on the sauce, but actually gets incorporated into the sauce. And now, this is the end of that recipe. This is the end of that sort of intermediate recipe in between the recipes that I'm doing today. This is your pan sauce here. Like I said, I used a lot of the onion here because I've got it going into a larger dish, but two things. You can use less because shallots have a more powerful flavor without having to use as much of it. And not only that, but you can strain this off if you wish. If you want like a nice even sauce, you can use a sieve. I've actually got a nice little wire sieve here that I have used a number of times for sauces, but that is just about good. I would say I could probably spend some more time with this, making sure this is really incorporated, but it's going to have an even easier time once I've got onto other stuff. But you take this thing that I've just made. It does not look particularly attractive right now. You sieve, you pour it over your sliced protein, whatever that happens to be. You're gonna go nuts. I promise you. It doesn't matter like what quality of wine you're using, really. You can use cooking wine, even though I wouldn't necessarily suggest it. I also don't suggest using high quality wine. I just mean not necessarily cooking wine. Use drinking wine, but not like fancy drinking wine. But at the end of the day, what I've done here is I pan-seared some chicken. First I made some bacon, and then I pan-seared some chicken in that bacon fat, and then as long as there was a little bit of fat in there, maybe a tablespoon, I took all the stuff from the bottom of that, I deglazed it with a little bit of, we'll call it flavor liquid, so either water plus some bouillon, or water plus some demi-glace, or maybe a stock, which is essentially water plus some sort of cooking liquid. So we'll call it flavor liquid. A little bit of wine, or another source of sugar if you're uncomfortable cooking with wine. And then at the very end, we're gonna cool it off with some butter. And that is your pan sauce. Like I said, I would suggest you just take your chicken at this point. And I mean, if you're making this specific recipe, you can do this if you've never made a pan sauce before and you just wanna know like, is this pan sauce everything that he sort of makes it out to be? You got your chicken here already. Just give yourself a little bit of a treat. It's bonkers good. It's a little undersalted. You can add a little salt right here at the end. Make sure to whisk it in nicely. And that is like, truly, it is going to up your game significantly. It is not hard. It is not expensive. Making a pan sauce, best way to up your game if you are where I was about a year ago. So, excellent. Rolet says, this looks amazing. I am so happy to hear it. Now, what am I doing with this? Well, I made this, I really enjoyed this, but I wanted something a little bit more. So now we move on to the rest of this sort of larger recipe. We're gonna let that be its own recipe, right? Its own thing for pan sauces, I would say. If you're sort of like if you're a bit of a novice home cook, but you've been home cooking for a while, great place to go next. Again, you hear like pan sauce, you hear, technically this is a wine reduction sauce. Is what I just made here. That sounds super fancy, but you just watched me do it. You watched me do it wrong a little bit, but you watched me do it. It's not tough. It's not tough, and it doesn't require any like freaky tough techniques. Just a little bit of paying attention to your heat, and there are tons of resources online Okay, I need a little bit more of this action. You can see why we want to sort of reduce it down to this level because actually, here I'll show you on here. So you can see this chicken breast, right? You can see it is pale all the way through. Now I'm going to put down half of this chicken breast into the sauce here. And you can see why we want to reduce it down. Because I can hang this here like this, and that sauce is going to cling really nicely to it. So that's why we want to cook it down until it's that kind of syrupy consistency. And then because it's delicious. So, good, great. I made all this. What do I want to do next? I am going to, now I wanted to stop this so that I could show you like, here's how to do just a pan sauce. But now what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to put this back on the heat. If you were making this recipe all on its own, you don't have to kill that heat after making the sauce like that. You could just keep it on the heat ever so slightly. There are cat hairs over here, which is like, I talked about wanting to be professional before. There's one thing absolutely bonkers unprofessional about all this. It's the amount of cat hair in my kitchen. Are you joking, Blue? Blue boy, I know these are yours. Blue, I know these are yours. I've got a little bit of heavy cream here. This is heavy whipping cream. I have not found there to be a ton of difference between heavy cream and heavy whipping cream. I am sure I'm going to hear something about that. But, and hey, Dinosaur, hello. Holy crap. When did... Johnson, hello. When did this happen? Oh, how you doing, folks? My name is Sam. This is Sidecar Stories, and typically we would not be doing a cooking stream. I typically stream stories, and you can find me here Tuesdays through Thursdays. You can use the links command at any time, LINKS, and that will give you the links to what we typically do here. But welcome. This is a cooking stream because it is currently book fair, and this is our yearly event here on Sidecar Stories. This is the first annual book fair, as a matter of fact. So I'm projecting it to be a yearly event where we go ahead and try a bunch of new stuff. So Johnson, thank you very, very much for the raid. I appreciate you. Just noticed it now. And thanks for the reminder to stretch, Dinosaur, because I'm a tall guy. I'm 6'2", and so bending over this stuff can kind of get to me. Okay, I gotta be careful. I went to talking, and so now that stuff is bubbling again, and we got it reduced down. When it's reduced down at this level, we are talking about a pretty dangerous territory here. As a matter of fact, it might have even been risky for me to just pour this directly in here because there's a chance it will split all on its own accord. But remember, water is your friend. Water is a tool. It's not an ingredient as much as it seems like it might be. With this, I'm kind of looking for a color. Typically, I've got measurements for this, but my measurements are designed for a much larger volume of it. And now, because we're not going for a pan sauce, we're not going for something that's just going to cling directly to your food. I want something that's still going to be clingy, but I want it to be more like almost like a, I don't know, it's going to feel a little bit like a stew in the bowl, I suppose. But I'm looking for this nice sort of like pale chocolate milk color almost, which may not be how it reads on camera because this is my first time using this setup. We shall see. We shall see. I think that is, we need a little bit more. And once again, this is probably less salty than it needs to be, but I'm trying to be careful because I've got other salty things that are going to be going into it. Salt is one of those things where when you're cooking meat, if you want the salt to be sort of throughout it, you probably do need to cook with it in some major way. But for most purposes, salt, unlike garlic, for instance, garlic really needs to cook with things. Salt does not need to cook with things. Salt can come in right at the end, just sort of join the party a little late, and it will not be sort of missed throughout the party planning process. So I'm going to cut up the rest of this, and we're going to see how much chicken I actually end up using here. Yeah, this is Kroger whipping cream. Indeed, you found me out. So I had to turn this down a little bit because it was getting pretty hot. Now we've got more liquid in there. This liquid brings water with it, and remember, water kind of protects from heat. I'm going to go ahead and add my chopped chicken in here. At this point, I'm just assembling the rest. So there's actually, it's a pretty quick transition from the pan sauce recipe straight over to the skillet recipe. So I am just going to kind of eyeball my amounts right now. I'm pretty sure I said that out loud properly, but it came out, it sounded weird. Remember, I only used I didn't use this for raw chicken. I used this for raw veggies, but that's okay. Gonna go ahead and get some chicken in there. I will probably end up using more than this, but that's okay. And a lot of this stuff, like I mentioned, this is a good weekday meal if you're not talking to a camera the whole time. And if you can do things sort of in parallel. Typically, I would have this stuff would still be kind of warm, but I'm just kind of getting it back up to temperature. So I've got my bacon lardon right here. I'm gonna reduce this heat a little bit because I'm not really trying to cook this anymore. This is just a process to get it warmed back up to the proper temperature. Good, excellent. This might be a pretty saucy one, which I am super cool with. I only used one of my 2 chicken breasts. I only used about maybe a third of my small onion, and I probably didn't need nearly that much. And now I'm putting in all the beans because I think this will be plenty. Or I should say, I think the rest of this will be plenty to catch up with the beans. As a matter of fact, I could probably do with a lot more beans in this sucker. But there was a little bit of water in the beans, and as such, it looks like it thinned out my mixture a little bit here. We want this to be clingy. We want this to cling onto the food. We don't want it to be sort of a watery sauce that kind of hangs out like underneath it, and you gotta go down there and scoop up for it. So I'm gonna turn my heat back up a little bit. I adjust my heat a ton while I'm cooking, which is kind of, I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of people who can get away with doing it better than that. Maybe I'm not one of those people, and I'm okay with that. I'm sure I'll kind of get there over time, but I want this to, remember how we got it to be clingy before? We reduce it. So I'm going to increase the amount of space for sort of water to evaporate out. And I want to reduce this just a little bit. Like I said, I'm not really trying to cook any of these beans down. They're plenty cooked. I'm not trying to cook the chicken. That was pre-cooked. Not trying to cook the bacon. That was pre-cooked. Stuff is cooked just fine. By the way, Johnson, hey, tell me about where y'all are coming from. I'm curious. What brings y'all in today? What was your stream? I take it you're raiding over from another stream. What brings you in? Kroger is King Soopers in Colorado, says Proteus Spade. Interesting. Interesting. And they're Coloradan. Excellent. Excellent. Not I myself, but you indeed. Also, yeah, if y'all want to know what Book Fair is all about, Book Fair is my sort of, this is a time when we're able to try a lot of new things. This is my very first cooking stream I've ever done. And I'm having a lot of fun, frankly. I think this is going pretty well. Okay, we're getting that bubbling, see? And when you're working with cream, you got to be careful. When you're working with reduced, liquids that have already been reduced, you got to be careful. But I think just that little bit should get it to a pretty nice, clingy consistency. That should be sufficient. And there we go. It's maybe slightly less clingy than I'd like it to be. One of the things I could have done was, before I put this stuff in here, I could have done another one of those spoon tests with the cream. After I put the cream in, but before I put the other ingredients. I could have done another spoon test just to make sure it's going to be still nice and clingy. But at this phase, it is sufficiently clingy. It's definitely clinging to the chicken and to the bacon, even if not quite to the beans like I want it to be. But folks, that is the dish right there. We did the darn thing. Let me make sure we got some heat. Yep, we're sufficiently heated through. Those green beans are still nice and crisp because I blanched them. Which means that they are not going to get all soggy and nonsense. And now, let me get a bowl. I will remind you, this is not a pretty recipe. This is a recipe that is good for quick prep. It's a recipe that's great for me to tell you all, like, here's a lot of the stuff I've been learning as a super amateur cook. It's not going to plate up nice and pretty, though. So let me get my workstation cleared off here. And boy, I hope my phone is not close to dying, because that would be nightmare territory. Let's see. Gonna get this chucked away. All right. Now, let's get this put together. Here it is. I'm gonna pop it out into the bowl here. This will be easier with a spoon, but you know what? I'm gonna do it with a spoon. Let's see, look at this silicone tip spoon. It was as a gift from the same person that gave us that little OXO cutting board. It's kind of nice, I kind of like it. Okay, there we go. And this is the chicken bacon bean skillet. Again, that sounds like something you might get off a chuck wagon on a ranch somewhere, as opposed to a great opportunity to practice pan sauces. But it is delicious, even if it needs a much better name. You know what? Hey, y'all, help me out here. What do I name this? What do I call this skillet? It is not quite a one dish meal. It's definitely not like a one pan like baking meal kind of thing, but it is quite good. Let me give you sort of a more of an up close. Here, I know this is a chefy thing to do. I'm gonna go in with my paper towel here and skim off the remnants of sauce from the outside of the bowl so it all looks like it went in without ever touching it on the way down. There it is. There it is. And I think for a bit of garnish, I would probably go with, this could go pretty well with a little bit of Parmesan cheese on top if you really wanted to like lay into the kind of the fattiness and the richness of it. But at the end of the day, I think you could probably just go with, let me see. Honestly, you know what? Weirdly, a weird one might be a little tiny bit of mint. But I will admit to you, I do not do a bunch of garnishing. I tend to hang out more in the territory of like, well, just get it on the plate and get it stocked up for leftovers later, because that's a lot of what I use these for. So now let's get back to chatting. Hopefully, let's see, what's this view like? Is this a decent view? I don't think I want to call it Sammy Beans. I don't think I love that one. What is that? Who is that? Roll it? No, Good Courage? Hey, Roll it. I hope you have a good one. I think, right? Is that who said they were hanging out? They were taking off? Yeah, Roll it. Thanks for joining us. I hope you have a good one. Thank you very much, Monkey. I appreciate it. Chicken Bacon Bean says Proteus Spade. Again, I want it to sound somewhat dignified, and I don't know really how to accomplish that. By the way, folks, I'm going to eat this food, and then I think we're going to spend some time looking through some of these cookbooks here. I have got the unofficial Harry Potter cookbook, and I have got Hero's Feast. These are respectively the unofficial Harry Potter cookbook and a D&D official cookbook. So we're going to take a look at those for a little bit once we're done here. But everybody, welcome to my kitchen. Welcome to, I don't know what to call it yet. I still don't know if it's going to be food truck, like the Sidecar food truck or something like that. But side dish is really good. Side dish is quite good. We shall see. But I'm going to chow down on this a little bit. And I'm going to describe it to you, because that's what good food tubers do in general. Here's what we got. We have some really nice caramelized, some really nice savory caramelized sugar flavors. There is a sweetness to it, but it's a sweetness that doesn't taste like a sweet food as much as when you spend a little time like practicing tasting food, you will start to notice it. I probably could have kicked, I'm just now looking at my dish with the chicken here. Chicken releases a lot of juice when it sits. Lots of proteins do. If you use that in your sauce, whether just for the pan sauce, put it in at the same time as the rest of your liquid, or basically you can put it in at any time during the reduction process before you add your butter at the very end. But if you put your chicken juices in there, that will kick up the flavor of this even more. But when you spend some time with food, you start to realize that there is a sweetness that can come from things that is really good, that's not so sweet that you think, okay, this is a sweet food that I'm eating. A lot of y'all, I'm sure, are very familiar with that idea, but for some of y'all who are just trying to get into cooking, I will tell you that this is a good, this is kind of a good chance to sort of identify some of those flavors, because it's going to come from the wine, or if you used honey, maybe you used beer, but I will say beer doesn't actually have a lot of sugars that will caramelize in this pleasant way. You're gonna find with this, with any pan sauce in general, but with this one even more so, you're gonna find that your salt tastes better. I think that's the best way I would describe it to somebody who is like getting into cooking. Your salt isn't gonna just taste saltier. it's going to taste richer. And that's true of each of the individual parts of this. Each one of these things, providing you don't overcook your chicken is going to taste super juicy. The beans, I would say, it doesn't seem like it like changes the beans too much. It tastes delicious on the beans, but it doesn't seem to sort of interact alchemically with the beans like it does with the chicken and the bacon. But it's very rich. You get that with heavy cream just in general. And like if y'all have ever seen the very fancy preparation of steak au poivre, which is steak with peppercorns essentially, you will know that that is a cream sauce, but it's essentially very similar to what we've done here. It is sort of a pan sauce. They also add a bunch of peppercorns, but it is a cream sauce, which starts as a pan sauce and then they add cream to it. It does get more complicated than that, but it doesn't have to be. You can get a great pan sauce out of basically any time you sear up, anytime you're doing a stovetop version of chicken or pork or beef, and then you can go ahead and make a pan sauce out of that. And then you can take that pan sauce and you can make that into a cream sauce with just, as you saw, just add some cream to it until it was sort of the right consistency. I went maybe a little bit further with mine, but that's okay. It's still delicious. But it's definitely, I would say, you are going to launch into this and you're going to think you're trying something new. If you have not delved into reduction sauces, especially reduction sauces where you're trying to sort of get more out of your sugars like you are, I mean, onions, carrots, those are, they're part of like the Trinity or sofrito or mirepoix, really classic cooking techniques, and a lot of them are designed to take best advantage of the sugar that is in onions and in carrots and somewhat in celery. Best designed to take advantage of those sugars. This is going to take advantage of not just those sugars, but also the sugars that are in your wine or whatever else you use for your sweetener. You do not want a ton of it. Wine obviously has the sugars, but you can pour in a lot of wine before you've added a lot of sugar, because sugar is a part of it. When you go with something like honey, you definitely want to make sure you're not doing this like a quarter cup of honey, because then this will be crazy sweet. It might not be bad, but it will be crazy sweet. Because I'm American, we like really sweet stuff anyway. But yeah, if y'all have never delved into something like this, I think you're going to find that this doesn't just taste like a great version of something that you've had before. This might taste pretty new to you. If you've never delved into pan sauce and just how best in general to get a good handle on the sugars that you have got in your ingredients. But this is pretty good. And it's been long enough that I've eaten breakfast that I'm going to finish this whole bowl. Meanwhile, what did y'all think? Also, hopefully my chewing noises are not just like obscene. You'll have to let me know if it's really like, if that's really a negative experience. Let me jump back into the creativity chat here on Discord. Monkey says, this has been a super interesting stream. I would love to tune in for another cooking stream, but it's time for me to head off now. Monkey, have a good one. I'll see you later. I'm just going to continue to enjoy this. And then we're going to talk about some fantasy cookbooks, basically. It's good. It brings a lot of, like I said, a lot of richness. And you'll start to sort of get a sense for why some people describe food in terms of depth, right? When you hear like, it adds a lot of depth, it's hard to know what that means until you get something that has depth to it. And I think this has got some decent depth to it. Jem says, so this is my bean prep box. Okay, fantastic. If y'all want to head to the Discord, you can find Gems' bean prep box. Always important for any bug out bag. For any emergency scenario, got to have your bean prep. You don't want to have to prep beans in an emergency situation. Y'all really are going to have to let me know, specifically Twitch, because Discord is getting that mic, Twitch is getting this mic. So if my chewing noises are nasty, you're going to have to let me know. Totally making this for dinner tomorrow, Sam? Good courage, I am. Happy to hear it. And don't forget, everybody, this is like one large recipe that allowed me to show you a lot of stuff, but don't forget how simple, easy, and effective, right? You don't need to buy a lot of ingredients. With a little butter, some allium, a little bit of wine, especially if I've already got some, good Lord, especially if you've already got some on hand. And then some stock, or you can make a perfectly decent pan sauce just with water. You know, I had water plus demi-glace instead of stock. Stock is kind of the standard one, but you don't need any of that. You will be okay. You will do all right with just water plus wine. But you definitely need the liquid, and you definitely need some sweetener. But again, it doesn't have to be stock and wine or demi-glace and water and wine. It can be a couple of different things. I want to remind you all, the reason why we've done this at all today is because, well, it's because I've got some awesome folks. And Good Courage is one of them. Gems is one of them. We've got, as a matter of fact, we've had quite a few of them in here today. I want to definitely say thank you to all of my patrons. This is Book Fair, and Book Fair is a great chance to celebrate the people who have supported the channel thus far, and to invite people to support the channel now. As we're trying all of these things, I would love for, I mean, most of the, I can't think of one yet that we've done so far. I can think of a couple that don't seem like they would be necessarily as possible, but I can't think of anything we've done at all this week that I wouldn't want to become a regular part of the Sidecar lineup. And patrons are going to be the ones who get to decide that. When we, you know, if I can start to make the numbers make sense, and I mean, as of this month, it is looking like it. I cannot promise every week, but like I can definitely take more time in a month and do more streaming. I think that would be a lot of fun, and the patrons are going to be the ones who get to decide what we actually spend that time doing. We've got a bunch of different levels. We've got different Discord rewards. We got a special role in Discord for people who are patrons, even at the very lowest level. You can jump in there and get access to the private patron library, where I try to get feedback on certain things. You can jump in and you can find all of the archived chats on Patreon. By the way, thank you very much to Sander, because that was his idea and it was an excellent one. So even at the very lowest level, you can get in there, and we spend a ton of time with Sidecar Stories on Discord. Discord is where I like to do so much of what we do here on Sidecar Stories. Lots of coordination, that sort of thing. And I think the overall thing that I would say is, like, Discord is the heart of a lot of stuff, and as such, we've got a lot of channels on there that offer a lot to you. So even at the very lowest level, you can get more out of Discord, where we're doing a lot already. At the next highest level, you start to be able to get access to a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff. Most of the behind-the-scenes stuff. That used to be up for a higher level, but I've moved it down because it wasn't taking as much effort as I thought, and I think it seems appropriate. So now, from here on out, those of you at the Pristine Page tier are going to get access to the behind-the-scenes stuff. There might be a couple of things, like super high-effort things, that might end up at a higher tier, but basically all the behind-the-scenes stuff, including my upcoming office tour of the Chop Shop, that is going to be available to the Pristine Pages. At the next highest level, the Chapter Champions, y'all are going to be my first line of feedback for new projects like the podcast that I'm doing. I've never done a scripted podcast before, but I am in the process on that. And I want to just sort of give y'all an update on that one too. I've got the next script written. I've got it partially recorded, so that will be coming out very soon. I got hit with a lot of editing, and then Book Fair was beginning, and I was like, okay, well, panic mode, I guess. So that will be, I plan to take the time, and instead of editing, I'm going to record that next one, then I'll get back to editing very soon. And then at any level, including all the way up to our 25 and new, by request, a $50 tier, you can basically, whatever your contribution in US dollars, add 2 zeros to that, and that is your word count limit for sending me sound bites. Y'all might have seen Big Man John. Y'all might have seen some other folks who do this, but I want y'all to be able to send me stuff, and I'm a voice actor, and y'all can be a director. If you want to send me a script every month, like I said, your word count is dependent on what level you're at, but I don't care if it's a Tumblr meme all the way up to a script for an animated film that you wrote. I would love to read it. You can give me directions on which voices you want to hear, how you want to hear it read, and I'm going to be doing the very first edition of that tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific time. Right now it is 2 p.m. Pacific time, so 2 hours from now, we're going to be back there doing that, basically in the regular Percy Jackson spot. But I want to say thank you very, very much to all of my patrons. I don't have you all memorized, and to me that is a pretty good sign. It means that so many of you have jumped in and become part of Patreon. I really, really appreciate it. So I want to say thank you a ton. We have got up at the very highest level, the shocking sequels. The highest level for right now, though I've had some folks asking for an even higher one. The thrilling trilogy, perhaps. We'll have to talk about it. But Jade and Dahlia, up at the very, very highest levels, thank you so much. Y'all are, as I've mentioned before, this is part of what helps me to plan my time. I can have great months on Twitch, and that is excellent. I really appreciate all of you who have been generous on Twitch, but Patreon is really the ones who, they take a much smaller cut. I'm talking 8% as opposed to Twitch's 50% on certain things. But also, I know month to month what's going to be coming in, and I can use that to plan my actual time. At the next highest level, we've got our novel nouveaux. We have got, you've got your name in here as your real name. Solderfish. I see it and I totally forget your username. Solderfish, Deb, Luis, Marinver, and Sander, thank you all so very much. Y'all, thank you for hanging out today and thank you for contributing. We have got at the next highest level, we have got our chapter champions. And y'all are the ones who you're going to be able to get to see some of these new projects early. Ashes, Sparkle Lovegood, Good Courage, Daniel, Gems, Vicky, Allied, Allie D. I'm going to do it every time. Orly Rose and E. At the pristine page level, at the sort of behind the scenes level, we have got Halfbit, we have got Jack, Lucy, Dan, Amy, Neens, and Holly Rose. And if you want to find out what Holly Rose is all about, well, you can go over and use the merch command, and that will take you to a link to a patron post. It is a Patreon post. You don't need to be subscribed to check it out. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of stuff over there now, as of Book Fair, that you don't need to be subscribed to check out. I'm going to have pretty regular stuff available over there that you won't need a subscription to see. So if you want to go check out what Patreon is all about, basically all the stuff that was patrons only, that is going to be for that is a temporary thing. Patrons only stuff is going to be available as of book fairs. So all the stuff that was patrons only now is available for anyone to see, but you'll have to go check out Patreon if you want to see it. We've also got at the bold bookmark, we have got Tanisha, we've got Reed, Sing Se, Saumya, Sapphire Lady, Stationary Fork, and Kim. Y'all have made this pretty incredible. I don't know, I probably could have found time for one or two of the streams that we've done in this week if it weren't for how generous y'all have been. I might have been able to try maybe a cooking stream and, maybe a Jackbox stream. And those probably would have been a week at least apart. On a super, if we had a vacation time or something, I might have been able to do them both in 1 week. But this week I have been able to do 2 streams a day, every day, for an entire week. And the ability to do that is absolutely and exactly because y'all are crazy generous. Delicious. Delicious. I'm glad I'm gonna get to eat this food. I'm sorry that you do not, but remember, it's easy. Give it a try. Maybe you can eat this food. Jem says, I'm not sure if you saw this trivia. The official name of scallion is Sepa. Sepa, am I hitting that C correctly? Sepa, and in Romanian, the word for onion is Chapa. Cheapa. Chepa? Cheapa? I mean, if I were to give it a real American spin, cheapa, but am I talking more about Chapa? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, gems, we shall see. We shall see. Patreon recommends not doing too many tiers. But, maybe. Delicious. It really is very good, and I was really happy when I first made this because it seemed like in theory it would work, you know? It's a delicious pan sauce. I knew that much already before going into this. And all I was really layering on top was this sort of cream layer and then sort of making a bit extra and, you know, having it really sort of lay over everything as opposed to just being a sauce that's sort of on the side / as a condiment, I suppose you'd say. But it's also pretty keto. It's pretty keto friendly, which Cass and I were on at the time. We are not currently, but that does mean keep an eye out because it's a fairly, you know, it's got a reasonable amount of fat in it. What with the heavy cream and the bacon and all. But I would say turn up the beans. I didn't get enough beans for my process here. I only used one of my 2 chicken breasts. Making this again, and typically when I make this, I keep a lot more beans in here, so it doesn't tend to be superbly unhealthy. Unless it's full of cat hair, which this one I did just get a little in there. That is not a required ingredient. As a matter of fact, I would discourage you from adding it. But some of y'all may as well have, what do we say? A vagrant sous chef who insists on helping you out in terrible ways. Chapa? 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 Huh. I don't know how close I am still. We've gotten into this before, Gems. You're not going to be able to help me pronounce things over the internet. We've learned that. Delicious. Marin Ver says, I would love to go that high, but I don't think I can right now. Maybe later. Marin Ver, do not worry. I want to remind you all of a couple of things when it comes to this. Well, 3 things. I don't expect anything. I know this is something, this is something that I do because I really, really enjoy it. And if I can bring value, I hope to. But this is why I think Patreon is important. The spirit of what it means to be a patron, if we talk about the classical definition of it, to be a patron is to be somebody who you are partnering with an artist in order to create something for the world. I think, largely that sort of attitude has been forgotten or misplaced in some ways, but I think I really want to maintain that idea. That's the reason why I've gone, I did a full 180 on this. I thought it used to be kind of ridiculous to do, to have patrons, the sort of reward for patrons be to see things early. And I've come around to a full 180. I think I have a post about this over on Patreon called The Spirit of Patronage. And for me, it is really important to say that we make stuff for everybody. Me and my patrons are partnered. My patrons are the ones who allow me to take the time to do it. And then I actually put the voice to microphone or the pen to paper or what have you. And we make stuff for everybody, which includes people who can't become patrons. It's really, really important to me that is like something that we do here. And I think it's something that makes patronage and Patreon specifically above really any other platform. I think it makes Patreon unique and really important in our modern day world. For my purposes, it's very handy, but just generally, I think what Patreon is super important. But yeah, it is to make things for everybody, not just for patrons. So if you can't, or if you can only be at a certain level, yeah, some things will be available to patrons first, and then they will be released totally to the world at Book Fair, and then that will be available to everyone, because that is ultimately what I would like stuff to be, is available to everyone. That's thing 1. Thing 2 is, don't forget that a lot of folks at smaller tiers will quickly outpace a few folks at larger tiers. That's true of just about every sort of fundraising effort. If a lot of folks jump in at lower tiers, that can do a lot. That is powerful. So you being one of those folks, that is fantastic. It's incredible. It's going to help me massively. You and all the other folks who have done so. And then thirdly, something that I want to make clear because I feel like there might have been some anxiety about this and I've just never really addressed it before. If somebody becomes a patron and then for whatever reason, whether it's desire or need, they leave Patreon and they are no longer a patron of mine, you are still very welcome here. I get it. I don't care at what tier. I don't care like how long you've been a patron. If you are no longer a patron next month, I am not going to be sad. I'm not going to be mad at you. You are still so very welcome here because once again, the whole point of this is to make stuff for everybody. I am partnering with patrons. It's not like I've got a relationship with patrons and then not a relationship with other people. I try to be very clear and try to really draw the lines that my relationship with you all is very much dependent on your involvement. I will have a sort of a stronger relationship with people who are here a lot as opposed to people who are very occasionally here. I try to be very clear. I am not going to be someone who has a significantly greater relationship with people because they pay me. All right, that is something I try to stay way away from. So I have people who both contribute at a very high level and also are super involved. But I mean, I love y'all here. Like I don't see a single name in chat right now who's not like deeply involved here. And that's why I love y'all, not because you're subscribed at a certain level on Patreon. So I try to keep those lines pretty well defined. Jem says, I think the arts should be supported as much as possible. We don't need a world full of just doctors. I think so, and I think, we've talked a lot before about the value of art just in general, and I think while we have pretty well-defined ways to reward folks who contribute science to the world, I've mentioned science and I include mathematics and such within that, the things that are valuable because of their objectivity, I think ways in which we can support people and allow people to continue to bring things that are valuable because of their subjectivity, i.e. art, I think that's really valuable as well. And yeah, I think Patreon is basically they are the ones that are doing it best. To my knowledge, they are doing it best. Yes, YouTube has ways for people to make money. Twitch has ways for people to make money, but Patreon are the ones who are doing it the best, for sure. That I'm aware of. Yeah, Good Courage says, I'm thankful to be able to support a bit. I want to boost the stream for everybody. And you do. That's exactly what you do. All of you who are in chat right now, who are a part of that. And if you're not a part of that, that's okay. I'm making stuff for you. I'm not making stuff just for the other people who are subscribed on Patreon. I'm making stuff for you as well. They're just helping me to make it. They're my partners in it. But yeah, I appreciate everybody so very, very much. It is awesome to be able to do this. It is, I'm really thankful. I'm really thankful to you all that I've got the opportunity to do this because I think I've learned a lot about the world from literature, and if I can bring that to other people, I really want to. I've learned a decent bit about how to cook for myself, and if I can bring a little bit of that back to other people, I really want to. Now, how do I talk about what I'm bringing back when we play Jackbox games? I don't know. Maybe I'm funny when I get an attitude, and if I can bring that to the world, I really want to. I don't know. One thing I will say, I'm not going to do it today because it would be gross. But every time I make this meal, this bowl does not escape with sauce left in it. Come heck or high water or dipping my finger into it and licking it off. Typically, that is the end state of this. This sauce is so good, I'm going to eat it with a spoon. All right, folks. Good Courage says, so Sidecar is just a huge gift to me. I can't even say. I'm really happy about that. That's lovely to hear. Good Courage. Fantastic. I'm using them with my kids. We homeschool. Fantastic. I also came from a homeschooling background all the way through elementary school, and I feel I'm very thankful for that time. I think it really set me up to be successful. I know there are a lot of versions of homeschool, and I have, I've heard homeschool criticized, but if you have got parents who are being intentional, I mean, it set me up. They put me in honors classes the moment I walked in the door, my first time in public school, and so I learned so much from homeschool. But the fact that I'm involved in continuing a tradition of homeschool, like hopefully positive homeschool, that is thrilling. Like I'm gonna call my mom about that later, for real. I'm not joking. And Gems, I know I've been hanging out with your students as well. Gems says, well, Sidecar got my students into the arts, so I'm happy. I am really thrilled to hear it. Yeah, I think we've been able to do a lot of interesting things here, and if those interesting things can also be helpful to people, especially if those people are students, oh boy, I did it. I could die tomorrow, and I did a good job. That would be excellent. Okay, hey, y'all. I think we're done with the cooking portion. We're not going to spend a ton of time here because I've already been streaming for, let's see, okay, I've been streaming for 3 hours, and I think that seems like a good amount. I am going to take a look at these cookbooks, though. We're going to take a quick read through some of these because these are a lot of fun, and I think it would be fun to take a look at what we might cook next time. If we had the opportunity, I would say it probably will fall into a kind of a similar time slot as this, because this is when Cass is at school, and I have a chance to like really occupy the kitchen without bothering her, etc. And she also doesn't need the kitchen to like make food after work. So I would say, yeah, we could probably say these are likely to be in the territory of a time when a cooking stream would likely be. Just a bit of heads up on that. But let's look at this. This is the official. Let's try that again. This is the unofficial Harry Potter cookbook. Let's see. I want to see what chat has to say about this. But this is by Dina Buchholz. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. I've got okay familiarity with German pronunciation. Buchholz. Dina Buchholz. And it says, from cauldron cakes to Knickerbocker glory, more than 150 magical recipes for wizards and non-wizards alike. Okay, and we've got some sections here. I really want to see what y'all think of these. Good Curd says, I'm in a super good school district that my daughter goes to part-time. Oh, fantastic. Wunderbar. I lost a little bit of voice there for a second. But, all right, everyone, let's take a look at these. We have got Chapter 1, Good Food with Bad Relatives. Chapter 2, Delights Down the Alley. Chapter 3, Treats from the Train. Chapter 4, Recipes from a Giant and an Elf. Chapter 5, The Favorite Cook's Dishes. Chapter 6, Breakfast Before Class. Chapter 7, Lunch and Dinner in the Dining Hall. Chapter 8, Desserts and Snacks at School. Chapter 9, Holiday Fare. Chapter 10, Treats in the Village. Now, as we can see, we have to, they're kind of avoiding some of the terms that are copyrighted as part of Harry Potter, but I mean, this is like, these are going to be delicious. Let's see, we've got some helpful hints up at the beginning, but 150 recipes. What section do we want to start in here? Marin Ver says, I have not read Beetle the Bard. I have it though. Don't give Ron this book, says Gems. Yeah, and so I think it seems like it goes kind of in roughly chronological order. Good Food with Bad Relatives, right? With the Dursleys, obviously. Delights Down the Alley, so some things from Diagon Alley. Treats from the Train. I think we know what that's all about. Recipes from a Giant and an Elf, so a Hagrid / Dobby recipes. The Favorite Cook's Dishes, which I'm going to assume is probably Molly Weasley. We've got Breakfast Before Class. That is, breakfast, fairly straightforward. Lunch and Dinner in the Dining Hall. Excellent. Desserts and Snacks at School. Excellent. And then we've got Chapter 9, Holiday Fare, which I think is probably sort of holiday feast material. And then finally, Chapter 10, Treats in the Village. What do we think? What do we think? Jem says breakfast. Good Courage says rock cakes. I tell you what, let's see if rock cakes are in here, and then we will see if they're not. We'll just check out breakfast just in general, because, yeah, breakfast before class 105. So page 51, let's see. Do we have rock cakes? 51. Come on now. 51, recipes from a giant and an elf. First page. First page, no worries. Rock cakes. Let's talk about it. This treat, if the word may be applied to something Hagrid made, is often found in his pantry, as it's mentioned no less than 3 times in the Harry Potter series in relation to Hagrid. Although Hagrid's rock cakes were nothing to write home about, you'll find these to be quite tasty. See Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Chapter 8, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Chapter 3, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Chapter 11. Let's see. We got a little side note here that says rock cakes, standard with tea, look like but don't taste like rocks, unless of course you leave them out for several days, which is probably what Hagrid did. Rock cakes have a short history and seem to be invented by the Victorians. Interesting. Now, I do wonder if we are going to end up here like a scone. That seems like the sort of territory we should be landing in. It seems like, you know, if it's common with tea, if it's got the description of a bit like a rock, the thing that I am imagining with that texture, especially if it is a cake type of thing, I'm imagining a scone. Let's see if this sounds familiar to anybody. I don't do a ton of baking, so y'all might need to let me know. I'm out of my iced tea. Very disappointing. 2 cups of flour, half a cup of sugar, a teaspoon of baking powder, half teaspoon cinnamon, a quarter of salt, 1 stick of cold butter, cut into chunks. There we go. 1 large egg, a third cup of whole milk, 1 cup of raisins. Raisins, interesting. So maybe more of a biscuit kind of thing. Preheat the oven, grease it, mix the stuff together. With your fingertips, rub the butter into the dry ingredients until the mixture reaches consistency of wet sand. Gotcha. So this is like a, what is it? Is that called rough puff? Is that where we're at? I know this is kind of a, this is overall though, this is a very biscuit type of construction. So we're making biscuits here. Beat the egg together with the milk, pour it into the flour/butter, drop dough by rounded tablespoonfuls onto a prepared cookie sheet, bake for 25 minutes until the bottoms are golden, rotating in the pan midway through baking. I skipped some of that stuff just so y'all are aware. I'm not going to read these verbatim, but it makes 12 for rock cakes. Hard like Hagrid's, just bake them for too long and eat them a week later at your own risk. Okay, so we're talking biscuits. They do sound good. Yeah, we got basically like cinnamon raisin biscuits. It sounds delicious. Yeah, totally. Jem says totally cinnamon biscuits. Indeed. Marion Ver says they sound kind of good. I think they do indeed. I would probably turn up the cinnamon, and I could maybe even see a little bit of vanilla in there, maybe a tiny bit of maybe almond extract. That could be pretty good. That sounds fabulous. Yep, I could definitely go for some rock cakes. Can y'all guess what Sam's most, when Sam read through the series, what was the thing Sam most desired to try? It is a thing mentioned in the books. I just want to see if y'all have any guesses about this. What is the thing that Sam most wanted to get my hands on so I could eat the darn thing? Because they talk about it and it sounded delicious. It is not a beverage. Because I think butterbeer is probably very, very common. I want to take that one off the table so that y'all don't have to worry about it. But what do you think it might be? I'll give y'all some hints as we move along, but I'm going to see if by the end of this stream y'all can guess which one it was. Gems, I think Gems probably typed that one in before I was done. But yeah, Gem says butterbeer. Absolutely, that one was on my list. But this one is a food. Marion Ver says Harry's flying snitch cake. Interesting. No, I hadn't even thought about that one. Yeah, in my head, I was so wrapped up in all the other things that were going on contemporary to when Harry got his flying snitch cake in, I want to say book 7? Is that where it was? Book 7? It was a book 7. Do y'all remember? It was book 7. Does that sound right? I don't remember. Basically cinnamon biscuits for these rock cakes. I think so. All right, now we had a request for Gems. I believe Molly did make it. I believe Molly was responsible for the snitch cake. I can't remember if it was 6 or 7, but I want to say it was 7. Now we had a request for breakfast as well. Let's talk breakfasts. Breakfast before class, 105. 105. Let's take a look. Chapter 6, Breakfast Before Class. Breakfast is not just an important meal for muggles, it's important for wizards too, but it's especially important at Hogwarts, because it's when the owls arrive to deliver letters and packages from home. The flood of owls can be a bit much if you're receiving fan mail or hate mail, like Hermione after she was written up by a newspaper reporter Rita Skeeter in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, chapter 28, or like Harry after he gave his fateful interview in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, chapter 26. How many different foods do you eat for breakfast every morning? One or two, maybe. A bowl of cereal, a muffin and hot chocolate if you have time, pancakes and sausages if someone loves you very much or it's a holiday. If you don't completely skip this important meal, then how about a breakfast of bacon and eggs, sausages, fried bread, fried tomatoes, fried mushrooms, kippers, black pudding, black beans, and toast and marmalade. Oh, and don't forget the porridge with cream and treacle. What an enormous amount of food for breakfast. But that's the traditional English breakfast for you. In the 1700s, the upper classes, and later also the Victorian middle class, were served all of that and more. This heavy-duty meal is also called the full English fry-up, but today our cousins across the ocean eat much the same thing that we do. Plain old cereal or a muffin and coffee in the morning. But not to worry. You die-hard Harry Potter fans can still find the traditional fry-up at some British hotels and bed and breakfasts if you ever travel to England. In the Great Hall, we find a mix of traditional and modern. Some mornings find Harry eating humdrum cereal, but other mornings he enjoys toast and marmalade, porridge with treacle, kippers, sausages, or fried tomatoes. This chapter does not include a recipe for toast, although Victorian cookbooks devoted chapters to the art of making toast properly. Today, with toasters and toaster ovens, it's pretty simple if you just pay attention. If you don't want to make your own marmalade, you can find this favorite topping for toast next to jams and jellies in your local supermarket. Treacle or golden syrup can be found at a specialty food store in some supermarkets, or you can substitute maple syrup, light molasses, or corn syrup. Fantastic. Now, if y'all I just spent a lot of time cooking and then subsequently eating that food, and that just made me hungry. I want sweet breakfast foods now. I really want a waffle. I really want a waffle now. Devastating. Marion Bear says it might have been 6. Okay, excellent. But let's take a look at some of these recipes. We have got herbed and spiced fried sausage patties. Excellent. And it looks like it is taking you through, straight up through sausage making. Nice. Just starting with ground veal, pork, or beef, etc. We've got fried tomatoes. Excellent. Those would be kind of fun to try. Because I don't think I've ever had fried tomatoes. I have had tomatoes, obviously, but not proper fried tomatoes. English farmhouse scrambled eggs and bacon. Not bad. Sweet orange marmalade. 3 oranges, 2 cups of water, 2 cups of sugar. That I could probably make. Thick porridge with cream and treacle. I'm not a porridge guy. I mentioned y'all earlier today that I've got a texture thing. That would be no good for me. For whatever reason, I really enjoy rice pudding, which in theory should be precisely the sort of thing that would make me gag. But for whatever reason, I really, really enjoy rice pudding. Crispy fried bacon. What about not so crispy? How about that? What do we think on that? I mean, the instructions are simply 8 slices of bacon. Heat a large skillet. Add the bacon and fry on both sides until it is crisp. Remove the bacon to a paper towel-lined plate. Repeat until all the bacon is used up. Serves 4. Yeah, I don't know where you're serving 4 with 8 slices of bacon. Good luck to you. It does have a side note, however. The British were much luckier than their contemporaries in other countries. In bad times, they had more food to eat than did the rest of Europe. Bacon was available even when a depression hit the country some 700 years ago. By the 1800s, the lower classes were eating bacon almost every day for breakfast. We have got cheese chivy scrambled eggs. Excellent. Oh, cheesy chivy scrambled eggs, excuse me. Cinnamon pull-apart breakfast rolls. Cinnamon pull-apart breakfast rolls are pretty involved, it appears. And kippers. What are kippers? Well, here are the ingredients. 4 kippers. Butter for serving, salt and pepper to taste. To kipper a fish means to split it, clean it, and then cold smoke it. Kippers are often eaten for breakfast with eggs and toast. Whole, cold smoked kippers are hard to find in the United States. In this country, they are sold as kipper snacks, small chunks or fillets of smoked, salted herring that can be eaten straight out of the container. If you don't mind spending a lot of spending a lot on food, you can order this delicacy online from companies based in the United Kingdom. I see. Kippers are fish. I never knew that. I never knew that. To have a kip means to take a nap. I don't know if there's anything related to that, but maybe it's cold smoke a fish and take a nap while it's smoking. I don't know. Interesting. I was not aware. Kippers, cold smoked fish. That is, fish that are cold smoked, not fish that is smoked that is cold. Let's see, what else do we want to jump into here? Proteus Spade says kippers are delicious. I believe you. Fish for breakfast is pretty uncommon here in the US these days. And by these days, I mean like since the frontier era. But it also sounds pretty good. I think smoked fish, you might find something like lox, I suppose. That is a breakfasty fish. And Marin Ver says dessert. Let's talk desserts. Desserts and snacks at school. 161. And I will say, there are desserts in other spots as well. For instance, there's a lemon meringue pie here in Chapter 1, Good Food with Bad Relatives. But, there's Paddington burgers. What's that? Harry eats hamburgers with Hagrid at Paddington Station while trying to sort out everything that's been happening lately. Oh, this is lovely. This is lovely. I like, there's a little like sort of tie into the books for every single recipe, and that is delightful and delicious. All right. What page were the desserts? 161. I was navigating there and then I got lost. 161. Here we go. Chapter 8. Desserts and snacks at school. The British are a nation of sugar fiends. So are the Americans, but that's another story. So much so that in early times, without dental care like we have today, their teeth rotted and fell out. You really would not have wanted to see them smile. The peasants, ironically, had healthier teeth because sugar was too expensive for them. Pudding is the English word for dessert, and the pudding king was George I. Georgie Porgy, pudding and pie, refers to him. He insisted on being served Christmas pudding, although Oliver Cromwell had banned it because, 1, it was too sinfully rich, true, especially if you're trying to lose weight, and 2, it echoed pagan Celtic customs, also true. The flaming pudding represents the fires that the Druids and Celtics lit at the winter solstice to strengthen the sun. Here are some of the quaintly named sweets that they ate. Frumenty, a pudding of wheat kernels cooked in milk and sweetened. It was served at King Henry IV's wedding feast, not the Henry with the 6 wives, that's Henry VIII. Flummery, an oatmeal dish that evolved into a blancmange type of jelly made with cream or ground almonds. And junket, a sweetened curd cheese. None of these dishes appear in the Harry Potter books. It's just an interesting bit of info. Of course, the British also have been eating apple pies and custards for eons, so it's no surprise that the desserts at Hogwarts follow a fine English tradition of being sweet, yummy, and unwholesome. The lucky students get fancy desserts on golden platters with each meal. These recipes are fun to make, even more fun to eat, and are okay as long as you save them for special occasions. What do we think, folks? What are we expecting to find in here? What do you think we're going to get with this particular one? I think we've got lemon drops. Excellent. We know. Actually, we've got a couple of the old Dumbledore code words. Lemon drops, peppermint humbugs, which, let me see. There's no, there is a recipe for this. Okay, I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's pretty involved, these peppermint humbugs, but the ingredients are 1/3 cup of water, 1 cup of granulated sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar, 1/4 teaspoon of peppermint extract, and a few drops of green food coloring or another desired color. Interesting. Classic and unique ice cream flavors. Let me see. We've got classic vanilla ice cream, tea ice cream. That could be really good, actually. There's some. Ooh, I've got some tea that I would love to turn into ice cream. Ooh. A really delicious Earl Grey that I've got could be some fan. Okay, interesting. Let's see. Brown bread ice cream. Interesting. That involves about 4 slices of cinnamon bread, heavy cream, whole milk, dark brown sugar, egg yolks, and rum extract. Huh. It says, do not use whole wheat bread for this recipe. It is brown, true, but it imparts an unpleasant grittiness to the ice cream. Apple crumble ice cream. Okay, fantastic. What else do we got here? Mincemeat ice cream, excuse me. Heavy cream, whole milk, granulated sugar, egg yolks, pure vanilla extract, 1 cup mincemeat filling from mince pies. What? This can't be... Apparently mincemeat doesn't mean what I thought mincemeat means. Y'all talk to me about what mincemeat is. I was sure it was meat. And I know there are like nut meats and such, and I know that like, I know that sweet, look, interesting. That one's odd. Christmas pudding ice cream, and then we move on from the ice creams. We've got chocolate custard trifle with toffee crunch. Oh, these are decadent, aren't they? Jam donuts, apple pie, treacle tart, chocolate eclairs, banana fritters with caramel sauce, rice pudding, spotted dick, no bake chocolate bottom pumpkin tart, creamy dreamy chocolate gâteau, custard tart, blancmange, jam tarts, good grief, custard creams, chewy ginger biscuits, meringues, and that is, at long last, the end. Wild. There's a lot in there. Yeah, Jem says it's not meat. Apparently not. Apparently not, because I don't know why you'd make a vanilla tart with it. So yeah, I guess not. I guess it isn't indeed. But I'm gonna give y'all a hint as to the recipe I most wanted to try. And I still do. It's going to be in the chapter Treats from the Train, I believe. I believe that's the chapter it's going to land in. Louise says, mincemeat is a variety of fruit squished together and canned and kind of left to ferment. It's an acquired flavor. Yeah, I was sure. I mean, like a mince, I knew... Like a pound of mince, I wanted to say was like a pound of, essentially like what we would call ground beef, but I guess... Mince meats, maybe I am in the wrong territory. Maybe I took one leap too far, even though it's absolutely wild, but then again, we got some wild stuff in American English too. Let's take a look. Treats from the Train, chapter 37. Treats from the Train. Harry Potter is very worried. His ticket says he must board the 11 o'clock train to Hogwarts from platform 9 3/4 at King's Cross Station, but as his Uncle Vernon sneeringly points out before stomping away and leaving Harry alone, there's no such place as platform 9 3/4. Imagine Harry's surprise when he discovers that the platform is something you do. What? The platform is something that you do. Huh. You lean against the barrier between platforms 9 and 10 and fall through to see the shiny red steam engine called the Hogwarts Express belching smoke into the morning air. Harry is one lucky chap to get to travel to school in a steam engine. The shiny red steam engines of the past had beautiful cars with carved wooden seats and handsome wood paneling on the walls. But this particular one had something even better. A food cart that sold unusual sweets such as cauldron cakes and pumpkin pasties. Harry enjoys buying stacks of the cauldron cakes, piles of the pumpkin pasties, and mountains of the chocolate frogs to share with his friends. See Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Chapter 6. What do we think, folks? It's the very first one. It looks like Marinvere has got it. It is indeed pumpkin pasties. To Harry's surprise, the snacks, which, on the Hogwarts Express, isn't selling health bars or Doritos. Let's try Heath bars. Or Doritos. For the first time in his life, Harry pulls out some money and buys as many treats as he wants, which includes pumpkin pasties. See Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Chapter 6. There's a sidebar. It says, imagine biting into a pasty, only to discover that you've just chomped down on a whole bird, skin and bones and all. Yuck. But in the Middle Ages, huge, too tough to eat pasties enclosed whole birds or whole beef roasts. Today, the most common pasty is the Cornish pasty, but in Cyprus, a pasty filled with pumpkin and crushed wheat is a popular treat. Interesting. Interesting and potentially delicious. Pasty crust, 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, 1 tablespoon of granulated sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 5 tablespoons of cold butter cut into chunks. Okay, we've got a rough puff going on. 3 tablespoons of vegetable shortening, chilled and cut into chunks, and 4 to 6 tablespoons of ice water. I guess, no, rough puff is its own thing. It's that it is not pie crust. Is it? Is it? I guess it might still be the same. Like I said, I do much more cooking than I do baking, and baking is like, it's a pretty scientific pursuit that I have not delved into so much. Let's see. Now hold on a second. Louise. Oh, I see. Okay. I got you. I missed something from your second description because Louise also says, mincemeat is a mixture of chopped dried fruit, distilled spirits, and spices, and sometimes beef suet, beef, or venison. Originally, a mincemeat always contained meat. And Louise knows this might be a better description. Okay, I appreciate it. At least this explains why they would be so wild about what they titled it. At least it gives us a bit of an explanation. All right, let's talk about pumpkin pasties. I'm going to finish out this one, and I think that's what we've got time for today. I think after this, we are going to move along. We have got our, what I think is a rough puff pastry, if I remember correctly, and then our filling is 1 cup of canned pumpkin, not pumpkin pie filling. We've got a 1/4 cup of granulated sugar, an 1/8 teaspoon of ground nutmeg, and an 1/8 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Okay, so essentially like little mini pumpkin pies. Combine the stuff, pulse in your blender, makes sense. We're doing, let's see, there's an ice water bit. Gather it into a ball, refrigerate for an hour. Yep, very classic pie crust technique. Mix the pumpkin, sugar, nutmeg, cinnamon. Good. Roll out the dough. Use a saucer to cut out 6-inch circles. Okay, so we're talking like this wide, and those will probably sort of puff up, I imagine. Let's see. Put 2 to 3 tablespoons of the filling in the center of each circle of dough. Moisten the edges with water. Fold the dough over the filling and crimp with a fork to seal the edges. I see. Okay. So we get a 6-inch circle that then gets folded in half to a kind of half-moon shape. Cut slits to make vents. Bake on an ungreased sheet for 30 minutes or until browned. That sounds delicious. Everyone, I hope you have enjoyed today. Of course, we have got the Heroes Feast cookbook, which we could spend some time in as well on a future stream, I think, just sort of hanging around. Really good photography in here, some really, really good material just in general. I've heard good things about the recipes as well. I will just read to you the categories because it's pretty straightforward here. We have got human cuisine, elven cuisine, dwarven cuisine, halfling cuisine, uncommon cuisine, and elixirs and ales. But lots of fantastic art in here as well. And yeah, I think these are 2 books which I think we could spend a lot of time in the future. Everybody, thank you so very much for watching. I am really pleased that this worked. Actually, just generally, I'm super happy this worked. I'm really happy with this microphone because it allows me to get much, much better sound. Even like, I can even hang out over here and my sound sounds just fine. I'll talk to you from right here. Hey, folks, I really want to thank you for joining me. It's been a delight today. We did some cooking. I feel like I got to pass on some stuff that I learned over time. And I would love to, frankly, like, you know, I talked a lot about what I've learned, but I would love to see what y'all have learned as well. So if you've got recipes that you like, or you've got like some cooking that you were taught, I want to see that over in the creativity channel in Discord. And this is true not just of Book Fair, but it's part of the reason I created that channel in general. So if you've got some great recipes, if you want to go ahead and share those, I would be delighted to see pictures, to see recipes, to see both. Go ahead and tag it with the interest recipes tag if you wish, but you don't need to. Ultimately, that channel is just for throwing anything that you make. If you made it, I want to see it. So, y'all, thank you so much for spending time with me today. I will see you in, let's see, just over an hour, because we're going to be doing some sound bites, and that is stuff sent to me by you for me to read. Things that y'all have written, things that y'all just think are funny, and I plan for these to become a pretty regular rotation. They won't have their own stream. I'll be attaching them to other streams, but it'll give you all a chance to send stuff to me and hear me read it out loud. That is going to be something available to all patrons at all levels. Your level just sort of determines what your word count limit is. And remember, this is pending demand. So we shall see. We'll see just how much demand there is for it, and we will find out how well it all goes. So everyone, thank you a ton. I'll see you in an hour. Bye-bye. Oh, now I got to figure out how to end this stream. What do I do? Oh, God. I gotta come all the way around to my phone and shut this sucker down. Bye, folks.